So, Nazis. Yeah, for real. Whenever I say this, I'm gonna get canceled again. But I'm black. I should be exempt. Isn't that how woke ideology works?
You're almost on the top of the hierarchy
I'm
as
on
far
the top
as
of the hierarchy.
who's the most victim.
Yeah. So I can like say whatever I want, and like racism isn't racism if it comes from a black person. Dude, that's so wrong. But no, it's seriously though. Reverse racism is racism. That's not the point I'm trying to make, though. But seriously, I have historically, because I used to read biographies a lot, and I've read Adolf Hitler's biography, and then also I'm really into history. Specifically, I love World War II. World War II is just, man, it's just a really fascinating period to read about. And I've often said over the years that I think that Adolf Hitler was the most effective leader in the history of Earth. And people get upset when I say that. But it's not like me saying I like him. It's not me saying I agree with him. I'm just saying, and this is a problem. Why can't we just look at things objectively? Yep. But I think if we look at it objectively, what he did was just insane. Like it's insane that there was a whole nation of people that effectively abandoned their moral and ethical codes and adopted a new one. Like, think about the type of just coercive power, how effective of a speaker, how clear of a vision caster you have to be to get people to buy into something like that. That's insane. It's insane. I don't know. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to me. And then, of course, like we don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what all was happening in Germany at the time. But have you ever heard of the Weimar Republic?
No.
They say that this is like the period that existed in Germany leading up to World War II and
this is after the Treaty of Versailles.
World War I.
Yes,
leading up to when Hitler took power in Germany. And it's very interesting to look into. You totally should. You should Google it. You should read about it. All of you guys listening, you really should. It's very interesting because, you're going to love this, Jack, because in the, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Weimar Republic, but in that period of Germany, apparently there was like essentially what is happening in our country right now was happening in Germany. Yep. The very progressive ideologies, the attack on the concept of truth, even specifically the gender discussion that is happening here in America right now, the gender and sexual orientation, but really the gender discussion was happening in Germany then. And there's people historians, not just, idiots, but there's historians who draw correlations between what was happening in culture and Hitler's appeal. You know what I mean? Like somebody who would come in and say, no, and be super conservative and be super extreme in the way that they want to handle the people who are propagating these types of things in culture. So it's almost like if somebody here in America, let's say Vivek Ramaswamy, came in and he was like, you know what? It's all these people who are propagating this crazy stuff in society right now. Let's just get rid of them. Like, and I know this sounds crazy, guys. I'm not promoting this as a solution. I'm just saying, when you read the history, that's what it feels like. It feels like what's happening in our society today. And then there's just this character that comes in and says, screw it, I'll fix this. And so, yeah, it's really interesting reading about that period of time in Germany. And I didn't read, you have to dig outside of Hitler's biography
Sure.
for that.
Sure.
But it's just, that's in the West, that's not in any of the history books. Like you have to go and just dig, because what they teach us about World War II is pretty black and white. Like Hitler didn't like Jews.
That's the interesting thing. And when you're talking about why can't we focus on the truth, that the hard part about that is we have to be empathetic to Hitler of like, why does Hitler feel the way he does?
Yes.
And we don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
Because and then that's why you want to scapegoat and say, I mean, he probably was evil, like it's kind of fair to say, but
yeah, of course.
It's super easy to say he's evil, therefore none of his opinions were, understandable, and none of his opinions were worth even considering. But that's not true, right? It's like if Hitler was like, you should not kick puppies, I wouldn't go start kicking puppies just because Hitler said it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he obviously was somewhat rational. Yep. Yeah. It is really interesting to think about that. And then also, what do you think about this whole the winner writes the history?
Sure.
You know what I mean? The winners write the history, because I've always found there's just like things that we were taught about World War II that don't make a whole lot of sense to me. And like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like I don't go off of deep ends about like the earth being flat, or like did we land on the moon? And I try not to entertain things that don't really matter. But like when I'm in a subject matter, if there's things that pop up that don't make a whole lot of sense, like I am a very, very interrogative person in that sense. Like I'll ask the questions, and then I'm not gonna like co-sign something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So like one thing that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me about World War II was that apparently what we were taught is that Hitler was trying to make this purified race, right? This Aryan race, and blonde hair and blue eyes. We've all heard it, right? But what color was Hitler's hair? Brown. And what color was Hitler's eyes? Brown. So, and then it was about Germany, but like, where's Hitler from? Austria. You know what I mean? So like, it's almost like we're just being told like these details that sort of fill in the blanks of a narrative, but like, I don't know. There was always so many questions that just didn't make sense. Like how is it all about this blonde hair, blue eyes thing? This man doesn't even have blonde hair or blue eyes,
When you talk about winners write history, because I've been thinking about this relatively recently, and some people might say, well, the United States had its own intentions, and the UK had its own intentions, and the Allied powers had their own intentions. But I've been going back and forth between, like, you know what, like, we were the good guys in this scenario. Like, unequivocally, sure that there were some underhanded things that we did that I'm not privy to, but we were the good guys.
Oh, we were the good guys.
They were slaughtering innocent human beings.
100%.
And I know that you recognize that.
You know what, though? There's a couple ways to approach this, right?
Okay.
I think they say that Hitler killed, don't quote me on the number, but it's either 6 or 8 million Jews.
6, yeah.
6 million Jews, okay? Do you know how many Allied soldiers were killed?
How many?
Dude, 70 to 85 million.
What?
I'm trying to tell you. That's how many. And so we talk about Hitler killing 6 million Jews, but like, see, I'm anti-war. I'm a nationalist. I think if it's not going on here in America, I don't give a fuck.
Ooh,
for real.
Even in that scenario?
Yeah.
Ooh. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like, because what we were told again, what we are told is that Hitler invaded Poland. That's how World War II started. Whatever was going on between Poland and Germany, that don't got nothing to do with me. It really doesn't. But anyway, Hitler killed 6 million Jews, and I see war in general makes people money. Specifically, there are politicians that strategically, sort of align themselves with these ammunition companies and these defense companies and all this people that make money on war. It's a whole industry. Like, for example, Nikki Haley is a current presidential candidate. All of her wealth is built in defense. All of it. That's all. It's what her whole personal wealth is built on. And so, of course, she's pro-war. She's like, let's go to Ukraine and help them out because she makes money on war, And so, conflict of interest aside, I'm just always highly like, I just think it's grossly unnecessary to get involved. And when you look at that, was Hitler wrong? Maybe. But there is a really messed up perspective that could say, well, Hitler was only going to kill 6 million people and we killed 85 million. Think about that, though. I'm just listen. Don't hate me for just giving you just a little bit different perspective on the truth. It's true. It's true. There's 85 million, 70 to 85 million per Syria right now. Allied forces. That's not even counting Nazi soldiers. That's not even counting Japanese soldiers who were on Hitler's side. Like 70 to 85 million men killed in World War II because we were trying to get involved in something that was going on inside of Germany.
Right. We didn't get involved because of the Holocaust.
No.
In which, had we done that, I think there's a significantly more defensible opinion on why we would get involved. Like,
but why did we get involved?
Yeah, we didn't get involved because of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
We got involved, which I'm not going to pretend.
Was it because I think it's because we're a part of NATO, and Hitler was moving east. So Hitler was going to Poland, and then he was basically on a warpath to go and conquer parts of Europe that we were allies with. And then, of course, Great Britain. Once Great Britain gets threatened, we have to step in. That's our baby.
That's our secret boyfriend.
That's right, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. This all started because before we got on the air, Jack and I brought up Hitler in some capacity. I brought up Nazis. And I do think it's an interesting discussion, though. It really is. And I think that when people, history is worth reading through. It's worth investigating. It's so incredibly fascinating. It can teach you a lot. But if nothing else, it just gives you a different worldview perspective. Because when you see all these events like laid out in front of you, then you can start sort of drawing some of your own conclusions, because there's always going to be gaps, and you can start asking good questions, but then it helps you interpret the events that we have going on in our country today. You're like, wait a minute, hold on, this has happened. Like some people, like a very basic example is some people find it hard to believe that politicians are corrupt. You know what I mean? Like when you're like, hey man, like, they just do. They just want to have faith in authority. I think that's it. It's not that they're naive or stupid. They just want to believe.
They want to give up the burden of having to think,
of having to worry about it. Yeah. But when you read through history, you can see countless examples of leaders and politicians who, at best, took advantage of their authority and they used it for their own personal gain. But at worst, literally sold their people out for whatever gain. So anyway. But anyway, we got Jack on the show today. The highly mentioned, highly requested Jack. Dude, I'm super pumped to have you on.
Yeah,
I really am. You're one of my favorite people to talk to because, just about any topic you have great insight on, man. Especially for a young man. You're a young savage, So, dude, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from? Like, you're from here, right? And your family's, it seems like your family's pretty well connected. I don't know, just in the time I've met you, you're like, oh yeah, that's my uncle. And then they, my family owns this. And oh yeah, there's my cousins over there. So yeah, tell us a little bit about where you're from and sort of what your family's role here in St. Louis is.
Yeah, it's always an interesting question. I don't know if I ever have the same answer or not.
Yeah, it's hard. When you get put on the spot.
Yeah, it is a little tricky. What am I supposed to say here? But I grew up in the city of St. Louis to fucking awesome parents, and like we didn't have without kind of deal. Grew up Catholic, so went to private school. Went to CVC High School. For the people that are around here, they know this, and that's another private Catholic school, and that was there on scholarship. My parents couldn't afford it, but they had friends that were also part of the CVC community, and so I went there. So as a kid there, I was small, and like if I were to describe myself, like the main thing that keeps circulating through my head as a young kid was just heavy insecurity. I mean, I was 5 foot tall in high school. And
no way. What are you, like 6 foot right now?
6'1".
Oh, 6'1".
I'll give myself the inch. I'll give myself the inch.
Dude, I'm still short. I'm 5'8". It shouldn't make you feel any better. But dude, 5 foot. Holy
Yeah.
moly.
Yeah, tiny. So like I always just felt, and this is one of the pieces, and this is what I've been reflecting on a lot in part to the men's group, to the men's group's credit, and what you're putting together there. Doing a lot of reflecting, but I'm starting to realize that I felt so out of control with things. Like I was never in control. People could manhandle me. They could push me around. Like I remember there was a kid my size, maybe even a tiny bit larger than me. And there was a time where, and this just came to me recently, but we were in the locker room and there was a bunch of kids around and he just starts choking me. And he just pins me up against the locker and he's choking me.
See, I would have stabbed him.
You know what I'm saying? Like
that's not good.
But yeah.
Oh, if I can't fight you, bro, this is bad.
and I'm just sitting there like a damn little baby deer, like I'm just not doing anything. Wow. And there's kids watching, and it took for some kids to be like, "Yo, like let go of him." But he had a big smile on his face, and he was like a sadistic smile, and he was just choking me out.
What?
And that's like, and the reason I started thinking about that is because like, you know, that's just one of those scenarios where I just felt I'm not in control. Yeah, I'm helpless, and so. Yeah, but anyway, good family and like a really strong dad that I don't know if it was a healthy fear or not, but I was definitely afraid of him.
Yeah.
And a really, really loving mother and a couple sisters and you know.
And but you seem to have like aunts and uncles and you know, are you, and I know that I heard you say before, like if your sister had a baby or something that she wanted to move, you know, and you would be like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, because what you were implying in that moment was that you really think it's really important for family to all be close to one another. So do you have a bunch of aunts and uncles as well? And then are you close to them as well? Or is it just like a nuclear family thing that you hold that philosophy for?
Yeah, it's a total mixed bag. So like the uncle that my Uncle Josh, who comes here, he's a half sibling to my dad. So the way it went was my grandma got pregnant with my dad when she was 16. And so then my grandpa and grandpa, and then they had another son 3 years younger than him. So I've got my uncle and my dad, and then they got divorced. My grandma remarries, has 3 more kids. That's Josh. And then that's my Aunt Abby and my Aunt Sarah. And so those are half siblings.
And those are the ones that own the chicken spot?
No. You're talking about
where do you get the chicken?
Maggie O'Brien's?
Yeah, Maggie O'Brien.
Maggie O'Brien's. That's like, we call him my uncle, but he's a good family friend.
Got it.
But so then like Josh, like that's my hippie side of the family.
Yeah.
Like they're total hippies, bro.
I could tell.
Yeah, total hippies.
Yo, Josh is a hippie. You didn't see it as soon as he walks in. You're like, did you microdose this morning?
Oh, for sure. I think he's perma high. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So there's hippies, and then my dad is super conservative. My uncle.
Really?
Yeah, my dad's super conservative.
That's so funny. That is so funny. That's got to be an interesting family dynamic. Grace's parents are like that. Grace's dad is like judge, cop, lawyer.
Yeah.
And her mom went to like UC Boulder, Colorado, like followed the dead around for real.
Yeah.
But dude, so I kind of want to dig into the first thing that you said though, which is the first kind of one of the first things you said about like not being in control. So how old were you when that kid like choked you? Do you know?
14.
Really?
14.
Like, so high school?
Yeah,
like
high school.
Freshman or whatever?
High school.
So what kind of kid were you at that time? Did you like, because me, for example, like going through some of the things I went through, I was like angry and violent like when I was that age.
I was too afraid to be angry and violent.
Yeah.
I was angry and I had violent thoughts, but I was too afraid to ever act on them.
Really?
Yeah.
So were you like popular? Were you social? Did you like? How did that affect who you are? Because so this is a question that I come to often in these full length podcasts. Is like, first of all, I don't ask anybody to come on the show unless I think that they have a lot to contribute, right? And so, with you being young, it's doubly impressive. But I really firmly believe that like in order to get to a certain type of disposition in life, like just sort of perpetually positive, hardworking, you know, just appreciating life for what it is. Like a lot of people I think that people have to go through some really low moments or some really hard things, or they have to have some soul searching that they've done in order to come to a certain disposition, a disposition that you really embody a lot of times. And so that sounds like something that was significant, that sticks out in your mind as something that was, influential in the way that in the man that you've become. So like, yeah, I want you to dig into that a little bit. Like, did that affect you feeling like you were never in control, or do you still experience not feeling like you're in control? Because I know, for example, I'm gonna give you an example. I can tie some of these things together. It's how my brain works. But you just did a year sober. You're actually the person that inspired me to do a year sober. Do you do things like that because you feel like you're grasping at control? Like I used to when I first got into this line of thought. You know what I used to do? I used to fast. I used to fast like for like days at a time, and it was because I could feel like I was in control. Like it was the first time I'd ever. And you just did a year sober, and sometimes I think that we can overcorrect or overcompensate until we harness it. Like there's this like limbo period where we're working on gaining control of ourselves, our composure, and awareness of what we are in control of and what we're not in control of. And there's this. It's so interesting. I never thought about it in this way, but there's this trial and error period where we sort of figure out what does that look like? What does it look like to be fully in control of oneself all the time? So are you still struggling with that? This is what I'm trying to get
interesting. I think I'm never in control.
Really?
Because even you think about the scenario that we're in, like I'm only giving myself, I have to put these parameters around certain things, or else I'll just fucking go nuts.
What do you mean? Give me an example.
If I didn't make that deal with you, I would probably drink tonight, probably drink tomorrow. Like I want to drink every fucking night.
Exactly. This is what I'm getting at. So you're still working on it.
I'm working on it, but I don't know. Like I'm a chaotic. I have this chaotic energy that wants to just fucking let go of everything.
Yeah.
But I have to put these parameters in place. Like, okay, I will have to give you, whatever our deal is. Yeah. Or else, and if
so
I'm
going to drink more. Because if I do, I gotta pay up.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'll ever be in control of these things, but I know that if I'm a man of my word, which is like one of my mountaintops of like what needs to be me.
Yeah.
If I'm that, then I know, okay, like even if I could have the opportunity to lie to Mark and not tell him that I drank, then that is destroying a piece of me that's really important. So I don't think I'm in control. I don't think I'm in control right now. Like I'm drinking one time a month. I'm not in control.
Yeah, that's really. I think. What do you think? What do you think about the perspective of? Because what we're talking about, right, is Jack did a year sober. Just give the audience a little bit of context. So Jack did a year sober, no drinking, and it's not like Jack has a drinking problem. He's 24. Okay, so he's 24. This is what 24-year-olds like to do. They like to drink. But Jack did a year sober, and that's freaking awesome. And then coming out of that year, he's trying to figure out what does reintegrating alcohol into my life look like, okay? And we all know it's very easy to be like, if you go out to dinner 3 nights a week, to get a cocktail before dinner every time, like it just sets it up. It's really nice. I don't know. Anyway. Because I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. But it can easily become like a habitual thing. And now you're drinking 3-4 nights a week, right? And Jack is very introspective, very philosophical. And so when you get to that part where you're drinking 3-4 times a week, you ask yourself, is this the person that I want to be? And if the answer is no, okay, well, now we're trying to taper back. So Jack and I I'm like sort of providing a little bit of accountability for Jack. We made a little deal. He's only drinking once a month. If he drinks more than once a month, then basically there's an accountability,
a money incentive
in place. Yeah. Okay. Which I love. And so now to my question is, do you think there's any merit to, because I'm big on personal accountability. I'm big on holding yourself accountable. But there's merit to the suggestion that gaining control of oneself is difficult. I think gaining control of oneself in multiple areas at one time simultaneously is exponentially more difficult, right? And so most people who we look at, I would say, that have a tremendous amount of self-control and discipline in multiple areas of their life, that happened over a long period of time in which they were working on one thing at a time a lot of times, right? And so what if I said that, because you're like, I don't have any control. What if I suggested that nobody really does in the beginning, but we all require ourselves to set these hard boundaries in certain areas or make these deals with ourselves, kind of like you do, because there's an acclimation period when we're going from sort of our natural state. We're going from this impulsive, fast thinking, like sort of desire satisfying. That's just our natural state is I want, I get, I want, I get, I want, I get. We give into impulses, urges, desires. We are very emotionally volatile. Like this is our natural state. And it's not our best state. It's actually, that's a terrible way to live your whole life, is giving into every urge, impulse, desire that you have, right? And I mean, every philosopher throughout time has always, painted this picture of this perfectly composed, fully in control being that is the ideal, right? So we're all working towards that. And I think that most people would agree that having a tremendous amount of self-control and discipline and just self-awareness about and intentionality is the goal, right? But getting from here, our natural state, to here, this ideal state, is very difficult. And whenever you try to change any of these things, whenever you try to cut off that urge, impulse, desire with respect to alcohol, or with respect to, for me, swearing, oh my gosh, it's the hardest thing for me to do, right? But whenever you try to do that, the first part of it is very difficult because it's not natural. It's not natural. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come organically. You have to very mindfully and intentionally work at it. So what if I would say, hey, man, you're being kind of hard on yourself. Like everybody requires this sort of gamification of cutting off bad habits for the acclimation period to not doing it anymore. But eventually it'll actually be really easy because you're like, I don't think I'll ever be in control. I kind of strongly disagree. I think if you let yourself go through this period, that there will be a time where you'll be perfectly in control. You know what I mean? Where you'll be able to like look at the beverage objectively, like not from the lens of somebody who has this urge to drink it, but from the perspective of somebody who like is just looking at it as like a glass of poison, which is what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's poison.
Yeah.
Literally. It's poison.
What do you think about that?
I'm trying to. Well, you made me start thinking about like I bet that there are things that I couldn't control at the beginning and that I did slowly start to have control, or that I just can't think of right now, or I don't remember, like in our everyday actions, just the way that we,
like now you walk into the coffee shop and you want to seem special.
And I probably don't even think about it, I mean, I get that shakaranda now, or whatever. What's it called? Shakarita?
Yeah.
Because
you're being harsh. You're like, I don't think I'll ever be in control.
And I don't even know if I'm being harsh on myself. Like because I wouldn't be mad at myself if I realized, okay, like you aren't in control, but
let's think of another example.
Let's think of another example. Yeah.
Like for me, dude, eating sweets.
Yeah.
When I was in prison, I've told this story, but like one of the first major lifestyle changes that I made was I just started drinking water. Like I set a rule for myself that I could only drink water, black coffee, and milk, because those were like in my head natural drinks, right? And so I cut off like Crystal Light and Kool-Aid and all these things that I was drinking, soda, and from there, the next step in progression, like I started drinking a ton of water and I started feeling better and I wanted to do something else. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll clean up my diet. So I'll stop eating all these things. Well, that was incredibly difficult. But then I actually got to a point where I was very strict with my diet for like 10 months. And then I got to this point where I was like, oh, man, maybe I'll try. It was so crazy, dude. I was eating the same thing every single day. Like, and I mean like, a fucking dog, like the same thing. Like you buy Purina for your dog, buying the same Purina every day, every week for 10 months straight. And then one day I decided to eat an apple, and I bit into this apple, and it was the best tasting apple I ever tasted in my whole life, because my taste buds just hadn't tasted anything that sweet. Like, so not long after that, I wanted to try a muffin, and we have those. I don't know what the name of the company is, but all of you have seen it before, like Spunkmeyer or something like that.
That sounds like, yeah.
The muffins that come in vending machines sometimes, but we had those, and it was a banana nut muffin. And if you've ever looked at the nutrition label on one of those, it's like a 900 calorie muffin. It's insane.
Oh, no
And,
way.
oh yeah. And so,
Ooh.
or it's something crazy. Maybe it's not 900, but it's something crazy. So anyway, one day I had the opportunity to eat one of those, and I put it in my mouth, and it was so sweet that it tasted sour to me. Like it was
Mhm.
like my taste. So anyway,
Gotcha.
I'm saying in the beginning it was
Gotcha.
very difficult, and then eventually
Gotcha.
I didn't even like I couldn't. It wasn't even. It didn't even look appealing to me. I was like, oh, I don't want this. So I think that's another example of what we're talking about. The same thing could happen with alcohol. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess my question is then if the desire goes away, let's say, is that what we're talking about here? The desire goes away.
Now you're in control. You did that.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, because where my head is going right now is the desire is going away. So if the desire was there, would I still be in control?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
like how
Yeah.
strong against my desires am I?
Yeah. And what's the point? Like, really, what's the point? What makes you want to control it?
Because I know what it does to my life. It puts me in bad situations.
Man, that's interesting. Yeah,
100% easily. Like, no, without a doubt.
Man, how does that change your life?
In a really great way.
Really?
Yeah.
Talk about it.
It really changed the circle of people that I surrounded myself with. That unequivocally is the biggest difference right there.
Yeah. And they say that you are who you surround yourself with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, that's so crazy because sometimes I think about there's a couple of things I have in my mind right now. One is I don't know what you've been through other than this, but I know that this was probably a very eye-opening experience. And I often think that like all the worst things that have ever happened to me have somehow become the best things that have ever happened to me. For real.
Like I think kids that don't have any adversity are the least privileged people on the planet. Like that have not had to go through anything.
See, it just depends on your definition of privilege.
Yeah.
But I generally would disagree just because of the commonly accepted definition of privilege. I think, but I think I know what you're getting at, which is the suggestion that people who have gone through things are better equipped
100%.
for life. And I agree 1,000%. Like I didn't go to college. I was just having this conversation we have so many college students that come here, and a lot of them are med or pre-med or medical students, right? So these are kids that are going to school for 6, 8, 10 years. And they all look at me like I'm some business successful person, which is not true. But they look at me like I'm some leader or some role model or whatever. And so this girl asked me like, where'd I go to school? And I was like, I didn't go to school. I went to prison, you know? And she's like, well, you know, she's kind of like looking around, and I could kind of tell that she was like, well, how did you do all this? And I'm like, well, I learned everything that I know about business and about, you know, this from the streets, like for real, from selling drugs. Like, and that's not something that I suggest that anybody does, but it's just going through those low points. Like it's because of where I come from that sort of that life was introduced to me. And, you know, just being born at a disadvantage, I was exposed to things that kids that are privileged would never be exposed to. And it led me down a path that where I cultivated, like for another example, spending so much time in prison, dude, I have like an uncanny ability to read a room. Like, and also to monitor a room. Like, I don't just read a room, like when I walk in, but like I know where every person is in this room. Almost every moment. Like, not even that. Like Lau and Brian could tell you too, like, I'm just so hyper aware of everything that's going on. Like the volume of the music. Like if it was the back door that just closed or the bathroom door that's 3 feet to the left, like for real, like everything, like I know, like if that door is cracked or, you know, and it's being in prison, like you just have to be hyper aware of what's going on, 'cause, you know, violence or, you know, anything can and, but also like growing up, like it's interesting. I was just talking about this, but my mom was just in town and she told me about my foster mom, the first day that she ever met us, and my foster mom ended up raising me. But the first day she ever met us was when we were 15 months old. Apparently, me and my twin brother had been, my mom just abandoned us in this apartment. It was a crack house. And this was like a regular occurrence throughout the first 10 years of my life. But when we were 15 months old, abandoned us in a crack house. We had no clothes on. We were covered in shit and piss. In a house that was absolutely filthy. And they said that we had been there for 3 to 5 days by ourselves, like no food, no nothing. And I think like just some of those circumstances that I had been in earlier in my life has given me an uncanny ability to like read people too, like friend or foe, like as soon as I see them. So yeah, I mean, to your point, I agree with you 1,000%. I do think that people who have been through some things, they develop skill sets that like privileged kids don't. But then there's an advantage on the other side too. So that's why I disagree with you.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
I disagree with you. The advantage on the other side is the
resources,
the networking, the resources. Like there's positives and
I guess when we think about privilege, I think. Yeah, maybe. Actually, I would probably say it's about evens out because I'm thinking as far as privilege, who's capable of being happy and who's not. If happiness is the goal that a lot of people are searching for, which I'm not sure if it is or not, but if that's the goal,
it should be.
Maybe.
What do you think it should be? I think 100% peace and happiness should be the goal. That's it.
Then why aren't we all hippies?
Because that life doesn't.
We should be useful. I think. I like Jordan Peterson's
definition
of that, of like we should be searching to be useful, and when in being useful, you will be fulfilled. You will have moments of happiness, but you can't just always be happy. I mean, I think a heroin addict could be happy if they're high all the time.
Well, that's why I said peace. Peace is a better definition for me, because when you're content, like when you're like okay with where you're at and what you have to do today, like you might not be happy about it, but you're like, you're at peace with it. You know what I mean? Like this is me. This is my job. This is my life. This is who I am. This is what I have an opportunity to do today. And you feel good about that. That is, I think, the goal. I think that should be the goal above all, like literally above all.
What do you think's the route to peace? If there was like a hard and fast rule.
Well, I think it is. I actually covered this on a question here, but I think it's a combination of 3 things: gratitude, purpose, and companionship. And I think the first 2 are essential. I think the third one is like the icing on the cake. It can elevate the experience even greater. It can help you reach a bliss state. But the first 2, I think, are the path to peace, which is gratitude and purpose. And in the absence, everybody, the follow-up questions are always like, well, people have a hard time putting their finger on like what their purpose is. And I think from my own personal experience, before I had a mission, before I had a purpose, before God revealed what I think my path is to right now in the greater world, the first thing that I sort of aligned myself with in the sense of like, this is my purpose, this is why I'm here right now, was self-actualization, was just challenging myself to show up as the best possible version of me every day, because I feel like we all have an obligation to our creator, or to, however you guys feel. But I think
we can get into that.
Yeah, exactly. We are going to get into it. I wrote it down when you said I grew up Catholic, but I believe in God, and so the way that I frame this, understand whenever I say our creator or God or Jesus or whatever, you can interpret that as the universe, or you can however you feel. But I think we all have an obligation. Like something I think about often is, and the reason why I think about it often is because we have this widespread victim mentality in fucking society, and it pisses me off because I'm like, first of all, whoever told you it was going to be fair?
Mm-hmm.
Whoever told you that?
There's no rule book.
There's no book on earth
Right.
that said, oh yeah, everybody's just going to have an equal. No, but nobody told you it was going to be fair. So where did this idea come from? Life is inherently unfair. And then not only that, there's billions of people on the planet that have it way worse than you do. If you're sitting here in the United States of America complaining about the fact that it's not fair, but furthermore, and the most, I think, important piece to get to is that you didn't ask to be here. You didn't ask to be here. You didn't wait in line for an opportunity at life. You didn't put in a special request. You didn't fill out an application. You just fucking showed up here. Your life is a gift. You were gifted an opportunity at life. How dare you fucking sit here and complain about it? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean that it's not fair? You didn't ask for this. You just showed up here. If you don't like it, don't take it. You know, like that's how I really feel. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what just set me off on that tangent. What was I saying before that?
The three things that equal a happy life.
And so when you take into account the fact that this is a gift, when you have that perspective that you were gifted this opportunity, like I just feel like if you don't allow yourself on a daily basis to be overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude for the fact that you have this opportunity to go live however you want today. You could show up however you want today. Why not do your best to fulfill your personal potential today? You don't have to fulfill your lifelong potential today. You fulfill the potential that today has. Sometimes I remind myself in the beginning of the day, I say, man, when I wake up feeling like shit, I'll be like, man, today has the potential to be the greatest day of your life. It does.
Yeah.
Every day that you wake up has the potential to be the greatest day of your life. You don't know what's going to happen today. You don't know. Anything could happen today. It could be the greatest day of your life. So act like it. You know what I mean? And so before you have a purpose, because there's a lot of people listening here, most of you will probably say, man, I don't know what my purpose is. The first thing is really try to start living in alignment with that. Ask yourself, what, you know, every day when I pray, I say, man, thank you, God. Thank you for giving me another opportunity to show up as the man that you created me to be. Well, what does that look like? For you, if you're a woman listening to this, what does that look like? Who's the man or woman that God created you to be, that God gave you the opportunity to be today? And that is a very purpose-filled endeavor. It really is. When you start taking that seriously, when you say, man, I have an obligation, you know, that's the least I could do to repay whoever it is or whatever forces it was that gave me this opportunity at life. The least I could do is try to make the most of it today, is try to do my best today. That gives you a sense of purpose. And I think when you start going down that path, that's when the universe or God will be like,
companionship is
okay. No. That's when they'll reveal a greater purpose. Like it's almost like, you know how they say there's levels to this shit, right? People say there's levels to this. Well, that's like, or like, what is it? The hierarchy of needs, right?
Maslow's hierarchy.
So you're basically covering the first base of the pyramid, but after you get in alignment with, okay, this is who you're supposed to be. Now, like, here's the path you're supposed to be on. You know, I think that's where, like, that's how it happened for me. That's how it happened for me, and I can only speak from personal experience. But I live a very purpose-driven life. Like, I only do what I feel called to do, and I found peace, dude. I found peace. It's really crazy, man. It's really crazy. This is why I'm like not a money-driven person. I'm not a materialistic person, because I found peace in the lowest point of my life. I found peace in prison. I didn't have companionship, you know, but I found that peace and the happiest day of my life. I was in prison. Still to this day, I had the happiest moment of my life in prison. And it's like, you ask yourself, how? I didn't have any money. I didn't have any property. I have nothing, but I had purpose and I had gratitude.
And in that piece is acceptance, I guess, right? Like, what does the word?
What do you mean?
You've accepted life. Because in prison, you had to come to the acceptance that you were in prison, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not about that. It's not about acceptance. Like, it's about gratitude.
Accepting the circumstances of your life.
Yeah, but acceptance is like, acceptance.
You don't like that word?
I don't
huh?
like that word. It's almost like settling. You know what I mean? It's like, oh,
Okay,
I'll
I
settle.
get why that.
I don't like that word. It's gratitude. You know what I would say when I was in prison, bro? I used to, I would sleep on something that was hard like this. This is what it was like, a fucking metal cot. And I would roll off my bed onto the ground, and I would start saying the same gratitude prayer every morning. I'd be like, thank you, God, thank you, because I know that there's hundreds of millions of people in the world right now that would give their left arm to be where I am in a prison in the United States of America with 3 hot meals. I just got out of a warm bed with a blanket, with a roof over my head, and I'm about to go take a hot shower. Like, I would be so grateful. It's not accepting. I get what you're saying. I accept it.
I get what you're saying.
I'm only in prison for right now. No, thank you. I'm so glad I'm in prison right now. Like, that's different than accepting.
I get what you're saying. You know what's like my dad.
What do you think? Hold on. What about the path to peace? Yeah, I mean, granted, I don't know that you claim to have found it yet, but
I don't. Yeah.
But I love this conversation because I have. Like, I'm telling, dude, I've been so damn happy I'll just start crying in the middle of the day for no reason. But it wasn't like a fleeting moment. It was like I was just like that. Like, I was weird. I would be in prison. I would call home and be like, man, I think I'm losing my mind. I swear to God, I think I'm fucking crazy. Because I was so happy all the time. Dude, it's a bliss that I haven't even experienced since. I get down on myself. Grace will tell you. I get down on myself sometimes. The only time I ever get down, really hard, one of the only times I only get down on myself, or I get down on myself these days, is when I'm like, man, how can I be the best version of me when I'm not even the best version that I ever was? Like, I'm not even close, because I know I'm not even as good as I once was. And what I mean by good is just as
at that level of blissfulness.
Of just bliss. But okay, yeah, what do you think about finding peace?
Well, I completely and utterly agree with the gratitude part. Like, that is, I think when you, and I know we've talked about this, like, when you are grateful, you are, to me, in the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, this is good. I really like when you talk about this, because I haven't thought about it in this way.
Because when you're grateful, you're in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus actually said the kingdom of heaven is here on earth.
Really?
Yeah, that might make some Christians upset, boy.
I ain't gonna go there. I'm uneducated.
We'll get into it. We'll for another time. But when you're grateful, you're in heaven because you're at peace, because you desire nothing. You have when you are truly grateful, you have zero desires. I
agree.
Because if you had a desire, then you wouldn't be truly grateful.
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is true as well. If you have desire, like envy and like these things, like envy and we'll just say envy, you're in hell. Like, and I think that is what hell is. Is because you are so lacking and so without and so far away from that peace.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think gratitude, but not even a religious perspective, but Tony Robbins, he says giving and growing. If you're not giving and growing, you're those are the keys for him to finding peace, and just putting that giving piece of it. I do think that comes back to the purpose. It's like, how can I contribute? I really do. I think you can't do it without purpose, because what are you doing then? What is your life? Like, people will get on me over these past 7-8 years that I've been living this way about, like, don't you ever take a break, Mark? You work too much. You work too hard. And I'm very genuine and sincere in the way that I ask this, but it's like, or the way that I say this is, I genuinely can't think of a better use of my time.
Yeah, right. Practically speaking, you genuinely cannot. Not even on a philosophical
I
thought.
legitimately can't think of anything that I would rather spend my time doing.
Sipping Mai Tais on the beach?
Like, I just can't.
Yeah.
No, that sounds,
I know.
That sounds awful.
I know.
Like, what do you mean?
Terrible.
It sounds like I'm taking the opportunity that God gave me for granted to just sit around and do nothing. Like, even like in a spiritual religious sense, the world is constantly in this battle of tug of war, good and evil, you know. And I really believe that there are evil people out here. The evil does exist.
Is that an evil soul?
Whatever it is, whether it's a spirit or a force or a soul, or evil is real, you know. And I think that humans, you know, humans are very easily influenced and manipulated. I think that energy is contagious, you know, and when you just think about those two things combined, it's very evil. It's very easy for things to spread. You know, it's very easy for a herd mentality to develop. It's very easy. And I think that if you look throughout the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or there's, you know, in the spiritual realm of Western theology, there's a lot of examples of God and the devil or the evil forces, right, using people to sort of carry out their will, right? And so even aside from like a very basic level of the word of purpose, you know, and contributing in the world, which I think is an essential component. Like, this is what I'm coming back to, is not only gratitude, but purpose, like finding a role, a way to contribute to the whole. I think that that is when we find that. That's when we find that peace. And without it, you're what are you? Just a spectator in life. And I don't know. I think it's hard for me to think about this in a non-religious sense, but like, in order for you to fulfill the role, the purpose that God has for you, like, I think that you have to be on his team, so to speak. Does that make sense? Because I worry also about the spread of evil, you know, like if energy is contagious, and if, you know, the herd mentality is really easy to fall into, like there's evil things that are being propagated in our society right now, and that have spread. Like, there's things right now in our society that if you would have done it 15 years ago, you went to jail, or you would have went to a mental institution, and today they're normal. Today people are championing it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you had a boy child 20 years ago, and you took him to a doctor and had his penis cut off, or no, you know what? I'll use a different example. That example is true, and I stand by that. But there are kids in America right now there are schools in America right now that have litter boxes in the bathrooms. Bro,
no,
are you kidding me? You haven't seen this?
I haven't seen this. This is crazy.
This is not even just.
I'm not doubting it.
There's
crazy.
It's not one school. This is a thing. There are schools in America right now that have litter boxes in the bathroom because the children identify as cats, and the parents are going to the schools and putting pressure on the schools to to accommodate their child expressing themselves.
Is this part of, so this is in the battle of good and evil?
100%, bro.
Who is evil in
I
this scenario?
firmly believe that, dude, I
think a lot of these are just dumbasses that want to make their kids.
There is a widespread attack, a nationwide attack on the concept of truth. Think about how dangerous it is for us to remove the concept of truth, for us to say that you get your own truth and I get my own truth,
right?
And the objectivity of truth is non-existent. It's dangerous. It's so dangerous. And that's what's happening right now is the parents that say, oh, my kid is a cat. He's not a human. He's a cat. And I just watched a video on this. This kid licking his paws and meowing in class, you know, and it's like an 8 or 9 year old kid. And the parent was pissed, just thinking about suing the school for not accommodating the child. But it's like, what are you talking about? I think that's evil. So,
And do you think that parent is evil?
I think that without putting this on people, because I think it's a spiritual thing. I really do. I think the whole ideology is evil. It envelopes people.
It's using people as its
yes.
What's the word in the fucking movie? Yeah.
It envelopes people. Yeah. Okay, people become like, it's like the people who it's like the people who are still promoting the COVID vaccine. You know what I mean? Like these people are, they're legitimate in their advocacy. They're sincere in their advocacy. They really believe that they're doing something good.
Right.
And then when they shame you or when they, whatever, they really believe they're on the right side.
Right.
So these people are not, I don't think it's the people that are evil. It's the whole ideology that just completely envelopes somebody and blinds them to truth. But what if that happens on a widespread scale where we're blinded to truth, where truth is no longer relevant or important? That is evil. That is evil, is the attack on truth, the attack on the concept of God. Like that, I think there's also like an attack on religion and God. I would even say Christianity specifically, worldwide. Like I really would, and I think that's evil. I think that religion.
What does that attack look like? Because I could sit here and say, well, I question a lot of things, and I really disagree with a lot of things within Christianity.
Dude, Christianity
and organized religion
has been systematically watered down over the past 50 years. Think about this. There are churches that have the trans flag outside, right? And this is very fundamental. That means that you think you're supporting trans rights. You think that there's nothing inherently out of place with a transgender person. I don't want to say wrong. That's not the word. Out of place, right? So that hold on. That means that these churches are okay with me implying that our God accidentally made you a boy. Oh, he just made a mistake. He accidentally made you a boy.
Is that the same argument for gays? He accidentally made you attracted to men, let's say? A man attracted to another man?
No, that's not the same. What do you mean?
By the way, I agree with you. I don't agree with the trans movement. I don't agree with kids getting their penises chopped off.
No, this isn't about the trans movement, because everybody knows how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to,
But is that not the same?
I'm not attacking you, but the question you asked me is, what does the attack on Christianity look like? What is the attack?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. And pretty soon you have something that is not Christianity at all. That is the commonly accepted perception of Christianity. You see what I'm saying?
I totally see what you're saying.
When you're not preserving what it is, you have to ask yourself, well, I mean, some people will call it progress, right?
Right. And they'll mask it with the words, these nice, call it progress, fancy words.
But the actual attack on Christianity is what some people call progress. It's not. It's intentional. Think about all the influencers on the internet that show up and they present themselves as a sex symbol every day, but they wear a cross around their neck or they got the cross tattooed on. That is an attack, bro. That is a systematic dismantling of what Christianity actually is.
Which is what?
And it's everything that we know it. I mean, but modesty is one of the things that I'm really big on, and I think should absolutely be a defining characteristic of somebody who calls himself a Christian.
Well, I think this is where like Jesus throws such a fucking wrench in religion, and
perhaps
because he would spend time. Do you think Jesus? Well, he would spend time with the prostitutes, and he would spend time with the fucking sinners, man.
Yeah,
like the worst of the worst. Do you think Jesus? This is kind of like a baity question, so I don't.
That's okay.
We'll
ahead.
figure out how to word
Yeah.
this, and you know my intentions aren't bad, but like, do you think that Jesus would have hung out with a transgender? You know what I'm saying?
You know what? This is actually something I'm glad you asked, because I don't think there's anything. I was just talking to my pastor about this, and people misunderstand my hostility towards the transgender movement and transgender people in general, because what they perceive as, I don't know, as hostility or just non-acceptance, is I actually have what I want for all people is to share that peace that I achieved when I was in prison. I want everybody to experience that. And I think that we have a duty to one another. I'm big on community. You know that. I don't care where you come from. I don't care if you're gay, straight, or whatever you are. I'm actually tolerant and I'm actually inclusive. Your opinions, even if they're different than mine, they don't offend me.
Right.
We should just be able to talk about them. But what I want, what I genuinely believe, is that those people are deeply, deeply confused. Okay,
Right.
And you could say it is a mental illness. It is a psychological disorder.
I would agree with that.
This is technically true. People hate it when I point this out, but it's actually in the DSM-5.
Yep.
It is a clinically diagnosable gender dysphoria. It's a real thing. Okay, it's a mental illness.
Yep.
Now, doesn't mean I hate those people. I don't. But my as a member of this community, what I say to myself, well, how can we help this person find peace? Because I stand by this. I don't think there's not a single transgender person on earth that is at peace. I don't think there's a single transgender person on earth that has found that peace that I was talking about, because it's impossible. And in my head. And so, and some of them might tell you that they are. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You're not happy. You're not happy. You're not at peace. You don't feel good. And so
I know.
And so what the transgender community thinks, right, is they think that I'm hostile towards them. But what I just have a different opinion about the most effective and efficient path towards peace for those people. And it's not acceptance. It's not leaning in. It's not saying, all right, Jack, you think you might be a girl? Well, let's go down that road. Let's see if you're any happier. I'm saying, no, we're not going to go down that road. Let's figure out what other options we have. You know, I don't think that that's the answer. Let's do some digging. Let's do some whatever we have to. I want to go in the opposite direction, because I think it's going to be, what I think is going to happen is you're going to go down that road, and we're only prolonging the process of you eventually doing the same thing that you would have had to do in the beginning to go back to work back towards peace. We're prolonging your arrival at peace, right? And so that's really what it is. I don't think that we should be, saying, oh, but anyway, you asked me, would Jesus hang out? Yes, I would too. I would too. I would
totally
too.
believe that.
Because when you
100%.
walk up on somebody, listen, I didn't have an opportunity before this moment to inspire you to change directions. I didn't have it. Like, if I walk up on, transgender over here or prostitute over here, whatever. Jesus was doing that. He would you hang out with them. Okay. But he didn't have an opportunity until that moment to walk up on them and say, hey, whatever. And I talk a lot about the type of people that when you meet them, you're just like, man, what is it about that person, man? That person's different. That person's whatever that's the Holy Spirit that I think inspires you, that they carry with them. But I would do the same thing, and so you're saying, would Jesus hang out with the transgenders? I think yes, and I think that that's the opportunity, is putting yourself around people who live a different life, and who are really lost souls. Like, it's fine. We can't avoid those people. How else are they gonna? If you never show them any differently, how are they gonna know any differently? What do you think?
And what I'm about to ask you is a question that I battle with all the time. Like this is because I agree with you in everything you just said.
Well, and what we were talking about is the attack on Christianity,
Yes.
right? And you're saying, and I was saying, hey, all these people on the internet that make themselves sex symbols, and you're like, well, Jesus hung out with the prostitutes, okay, blah, blah, blah. The difference between the prostitute that Jesus hung out with and these people that are systematically changing the public's perception of Christianity is the prostitute. When Jesus walked up on them, they were living that life. They were at the bottom, they were at their low moment or whatever. And, Jesus go around them and try to inspire a different perspective. These people are claiming to represent Christianity.
Really?
And they,
or the sex symbols. Yeah.
They're claiming to represent what it looks like. They're making them, they're intentionally saying, oh yeah, I'm a good Christian man, and this is what that looks like.
It's gross.
That's
gross
wrong.
Behavior. It's gross.
That's wrong. Or the same thing with the churches who are saying, oh, trans rights, you guys come as you are. That's true. They're really twisting what it says in the Bible. Come as you are, but not stay as you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But not stay. That's not the.
Right.
So these people are
different
from the prostitutes that Jesus would come around, because nobody's perfect. You're 100% right. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's on the path or at different points on the path. But the attack on Christianity is not the prostitute. It's not the prostitute who doesn't know Christ. It's the people claiming to know Christ, to represent Christ, but they're changing what that looks. That's the attack. That's the attack. So go ahead and ask that. I just wanted to tie that together because we went on a couple tangents.
That was nice. Well done, sir. You're quite the podcaster.
What's the question though?
Because you and I we both agree. Like, I don't think you can find peace through going through this route of let's say being transgender. I don't blah, blah, blah. Like, what do we have that justifies us, you and me, saying we know that this is not how you get to peace? Why do you and I get to say we know the answer?
No, that's a really good question. I used to you got some good questions. This is why I love talking to you, Jack. Jack has the best questions. So in the beginning of changing my life, I used to have so much. I used to be like racist. Being honest, I don't know if
towards black people.
I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but if I have, very rarely and never elaborated on it. But I used to be like racist towards black people. I just had so much hostility towards them because, and this is generalizing, but like I was in prison, and what they say about prisons and systematic racism is true, 100%. When you're in prison, 8 out of every 10 people is black, 100%. Like, it's crazy to see, which is just messed up. We need our judicial system needs a revamp, but. Okay. So the hostility was rooted in really my realization that how a lot of you guys behave, the things that you value, the lifestyle that you live, the way that you talk, the way that you dress, it affects the way that you perceive me. Like, it affects your... Like that, when we talk about stereotypes and we talk about, I at one time, me and my 2 brothers were 3 of 5 black kids in our whole school district, K through 12. So like I've been friends with kids. I've met kids that I was the first black person they've ever met in their life. You know what I mean? And they have this preconceived idea of what I'm going to be like. Well, that idea is really created not by these people specifically, by the media. That's what it is. By black people that you see in movies and music videos, all the TV shows. If you've never met a black person in real life, that's where your perception of black people go.
The news.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the news.
And so I just it would frustrate me so much, especially once I started changing my life and I realized that there's a better path. Like at least it was better for me, right? And so it frustrated me. And one of the things that I had to come to terms with and it still happened in this period. But it was like, man, hey, listen, you don't know the path. You don't know the path. You're just doing the best you can, but they're just doing the best they can too. And like truly, it's going to be another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe never, but years before we can really unequivocally say, hey, I had the better idea and your idea wasn't quite as fruitful. It's going to take only over time are we going to see who's actually on the right path. And then even then it might be debatable, because what's the right path? What's the end goal? But if we have the same end goal and you have an idea of how to get there, let's say the end goal is peace and happiness. Okay, that's the goal. If that's the goal, and these transgender people, they think that they're going to be happy at the end of this process of completely transitioning. And I say, hey, listen, that's not the right path. You should go this path. Well, this is actually my argument to a lot of people, especially the people that attack me on the internet. It's like, but are you happy? That's just what I want to know.
Yeah.
You're attacking me on the internet. You think that I had somebody yesterday leave a comment in our one of my posts that says the messages that you put on social media are harmful. You're hurting people. And I was going to come to your women's group at Omen. I was planning on coming at your women's group tomorrow until I saw this, and now I'm not coming. I want it to be like, but are you happy? Because I am. You know what I mean? Like, you think that the messages that I'm putting out are harmful, but what if they're fruitful?
And they won't even discuss it. You won't even discuss it with you.
But what if they're fruitful? Because even now, I'm not at the end of my road, but we've been at this long enough that I could start to, you know what I mean? That I could start to see where this might go. You've been at it too. If we're both 31, let's look at your life. Let's look at mine. Let's look at your social circle. Let's look at mine. Let's look at your internal happiness and peace. And let's look at mine. Let's look at your self-awareness. Let's look at your discipline. Let's look at your health. Let's look at all of it. Let's just look. Let's look on paper and see who's trending. We don't know yet. Neither one of us are there. But there's a graph that's of your life that is well underway. And it's being graphed, and it's not too late for you to start trending in the right direction. But I feel good about the direction that my graph is trending in all those categories: social, health, financial, spirituality, my peace, my happiness. My graph is trending in the right direction. And so let me share let me share it with you. But those people, now, you said, who's to say? What makes us? That's what makes us. That's what gives us, I believe, the obligation. It's our duty to share sort of some of the things that have started to work for us. Because if all of our goals are aligned, we all want peace. We all want happiness. We all want financial success. But we all really want those three things. Gratitude, purpose, and companionship. That's what we want, man. We want happiness and peace. And so once you feel like you're starting to trend in the right direction, share those with people. And if people are upset that you're sharing, well, doesn't matter, right? Like I can only live my life. All I can do is do what I think is the right thing to do in any given moment. So I'm going to share it with you. If you get mad at me for it, don't be deal. Don't take my advice. No big deal. But I think to answer your question, that's it. Is you have to look at somebody else that's either your age or older. Look at their graph and look at the direction that their life is trending, and look at your own graph. And the person whose life is trending in the right direction, because none of us know for sure. We're all just doing the best we can. But the fastest way for all of us to win is to learn from each other. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense.
I think about this stuff a lot, dude.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. I
really do. I want peace for everybody. I really do. I think it should be the goal. Very philosophical debate right now.
This is, I think you'll enjoy where this conversation goes next. I feel that way. There is an intuitive sense inside of me that feels that way about people who take the Bible literally, as if Noah actually built an ark and there was actually a flood, and all these things that are miracles that we can all call actually happened. And to me, I don't believe that those things happened.
Not literally, but you think they're metaphors.
Metaphors, all of them, everything up through the New Testament, everything.
Yeah.
And I feel an urge to be like, I think you're missing something if you take these literally. I think you are missing out on that piece. In a similar sense of like, people that are, just what we were talking about, the transgender, like you're not going to find peace. I don't think you're going to find peace if you believe these things to be.
Oh, if you think it's literal, if you think it's a historical
I think you're going to
account.
miss the mark for peace.
I think I would have to agree with you. I don't know. Again, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm jumping out now. Like, this is uncharted territory for me because
Yeah.
although I've been a very faithful and consistent sort of
Servant.
yeah, servant, but I've been a believer,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been very intentional about labeling myself a believer and not a Christian for a long time. So I'm not well versed in the Bible. I don't know the gospel and all that. I don't know what the Christian answer to this is, but just on common sense. And then also thinking about some of the pastors and some of the messages that I've heard from people that I respect in the Christian faith, leaders and Christian leaders, they take gospel and then again they use it as a metaphor, and then they apply it in broad strokes to almost every imaginable application, and they say, see, this is an example, but this is basically how you can interpret this. And so I'll give you a perfect example. I just heard a sermon the other night where he was talking about 2 miracles that were performed in the Bible. One was there was a man that was born without sight, and Jesus came and performed a miracle. He basically gave him his sight back, or gave him his sight. And then there was another man who he lost his sight. He became blind with age, and then Jesus restored his sight. And part of the message, part of it was, because I'm really abbreviating, but part of the message was that Jesus has the ability, God has the ability to give you something that you never had in the first place. The first man, the guy who was born without sight, he never had sight. The other guy lost his sight, and then God can give you he can restore things that you've had and then lost, and now, this is really cool. But then the guy applied it, said, think about that. Think about the broad application of that. He wasn't just saying like, God has the ability to cure your blindness.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he was using it as a metaphor for every other imaginable application in your life. If there's something that you've never had before, but that your heart really, you feel in your heart that you have in store for you, God has the ability to provide that for you. It's something that you didn't even know was possible because you've never experienced it before. But then same thing, maybe at one point you were incredibly disciplined, or you were healthy, and then you were struck with a disease, and now you're unhealthy. Well, God can restore your health too that you've had. So I agree with you. That I'm just giving you the first example that popped into my head of why I agree with you is because the Christian leaders that I respect the most, they take the Bible,
tie that in,
and they don't interpret literally. They take it and they say, this means boom, and they draw these broad applications of what metaphorically is being communicated in the Bible. So I actually agree with you a lot. I think it's I think you would miss so much if you interpreted the Bible literally. Like you're missing out on all the wisdom.
I want to add to one of those examples just because I love telling this example. But the story of Jesus feeding the thousands, right? With they only had so many bread and they only had so many fish, and there are thousands of people coming. Oh, you don't? Okay, so there are thousands of people that come to see Jesus, and he's I don't know if he's on a beach or whatever he's on, and they come to see him, and then they're hungry and they're looking for food, and his disciples are saying, we only have 12 pieces of fish or 5 pieces of bread. We can't feed all these people. And then Jesus looks to the sky and says, thank you. And then the Bible says everyone was filled. Everyone got what everyone was filled. He feeds 5,000 people. And this is another one of those examples where you go, oh, he just snapped his fingers and 5,000 pieces of bread and 5,000 pieces of fish came. But if you look at that in the way that your pastor talks about it, he looked at the sky and he said, thank you. And he was grateful. And when he was grateful, and when, he's filled, you are filled when you are grateful. And like, when I look at that and then I read it that way and I go, ooh,
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I think you have to read it that way. And do you think that this is one of the things that deters people from like embracing like a faith at all?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Because like right now, you don't really like call yourself a Christian. You're like kind of in that believer phase.
What's funny is I probably would call myself a Christian because I am working towards the truth and I am working to be a light in this world. But I wouldn't call myself a Christian of like, yes, I believe that these things happened. And yeah, I don't know how I would say what I am.
That's interesting. Yeah. See, when I was in that phase of just I'm being a servant, that's when I'm a believer, I'm a believer. But I genuinely, man, there's a lot about the story of Jesus that just resonates with me a lot, man. It really does. Like even when you talk about, like sacrificing yourself, like dying to yourself, crucifying yourself. Like I heard Chad Wright. I love Chad Wright, bro. I love that. That dude is crazy, bro. He is cool. He has lost his marbles, but he is like sold out on Jesus, man. He's like, Jesus, that Joker said one of the craziest things I ever heard.
And that's how he's describing Jesus.
That's how he described that Joker, Jesus, man. That Joker, he said one of the craziest things.
That's hella funny. Oh shit!
But when he said, he was talking about a part. He said, those who cling to life will lose it, and those who give up their life shall keep it. Right? And he's talking about selflessness, and you were talking about the symbolism or the of being crucified. They were just giving your life up. That resonates with me a lot. I struggle a lot. I'm one of those people that for a long time I thought you had to like earn your favor with God. Like we could talk about heaven and hell. Those things I don't think about them often. I only think about right now.
Interesting.
I don't think
like
about them
that
at all. Like that, like getting to heaven is not a motivation for me. Like it's not at all. Like at all. I've never thought about it in my life. Like, I want to go to heaven.
Yes.
Never in my life.
Yes.
I think about I truly am driven by a sense of gratitude for the favor that I have been shown. Like, that's it. Like, I could be dead. I could be in prison. All these things. Like, I've literally rolled the dice on all of those things. I could, many times. And every time, God's like, nope, you can stay. Nope, you can stay. So I've taken my life for granted. I've, all kinds of things. And so anyway, God's shown me tremendous amount of favor. And so now I'm driven by that indebtedness that I feel like, man, you know what, God, I should probably be pretty good. I owe you. Thank you very much. I know I owe. Let me repay the favor. So I've never thought about going to heaven because I'm not. I was saying that I think that I used to be one of these people who thinks that you have to earn your way into God's favor,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
And the idea of like, so if you follow that train of thought, when you think that you have to earn your way into God's favor, under no circumstance can like you do enough good to negate the bad that you've done.
That's what you thought.
Well, no.
Or that's what you believe
like
now.
I used to operate under the assumption that like I could earn my way into God's favor, but then I would always circle back to some of the bad things that I've done. And there's ways you can forgive yourself for doing those things. You can like repent for them, but there's no way to undo some of the things that you've done. There's no way. Everybody's done things that they're ashamed of, that they wish they didn't do, that they learned from or whatever, right? Like, I don't want to say regret because I've learned from a lot of the bad decisions that I've made, but like I still made them. And I would love to have had this perception of life that I have now, whereas it's an opportunity to show up as the best version of me, every day, or really fulfill the opportunity that God gave me. And I would love to be able to look back and be like, man, I dedicated my life to God in that way, right? But I can't, because I've been a scumbag, you know? And so I started thinking about this more and more and more, and thinking I can earn my way into God's favor by being a servant, by dedicating my life to other people and all these things. But you always circle back to the things that you wish you could undo. And then there's things that I think, not necessarily that I've done, but like, if you can't undo the things that you've done, the pain that you've caused people, the times that you've betrayed yourself and God, and your own standards, if you can't undo it, well, then you're still going to have to be held accountable for those things in the end anyway. Like, if you think that God is fair and just, then he can't overlook that. That's what I struggle with. Like, if you're going to be one of these people who thinks that you have to earn your way into God's favor, well, it's actually impossible to get to the end and be 100% in his favor, because you've done things that are wrong, right?
Okay.
This is where I was at. And so the concept of Jesus, where it resonates with me, is that Jesus died.
Mm-hmm.
He sacrificed himself. He basically paid that debt, because if you would have gotten to the end and God would be like, yeah, you were pretty good, but you cheated on your spouse at one time, or you were pretty good, but you thought about killing that kid that pushed your daughter, down the stairs, or right? Because they say that you can commit a sin in your head, like you can, when you contemplate, when you lust after a woman that's not your wife, that's committing adultery. Like, that's what it says in the Bible. Okay. So God could be like, you were pretty good, but I know you were looking at that girl in the Caribbean. You know what I mean? And that's for real. And so when you think about that, you can try as hard as you want, but you're going to get to the end, and there's going to be something that's not forgivable. And then, so if God's fair and just, you don't make the cut. You don't make the cut. If only good people go to heaven, you don't make the cut. So then the reason why the concept of Jesus resonates with me a lot is because he came in, part of the concept of Jesus is that he came and he died on the cross for our sins. And he said, hey, listen, man, none of you would have made the cut. But you know what? I'll take that bullet for you guys. I'll die and sacrifice myself for your sins. And in exchange, you get grace and you get mercy. And all I ask in return is that you acknowledge and accept that I am the Son of God. I am who I said I am. I am who I say I am. And you'll be saved, right? And so anyway, just that I struggle so much with if you have to earn your way into God's favor, it's impossible to do it, because you break some of these commandments, you sin. It's impossible to do it perfectly. So then everybody would go to hell. That doesn't make any sense. So there's this question, like I was saying, in the history, right? Well, if the story really is that Hitler, thought that the perfect race was blonde hair and blue eyes, well, it doesn't make any sense, because he's got brown hair and brown eyes. And that's a question that pops up into my head. Well, if only good people go to heaven, and good is characterized by living in accordance with these laws, well, you broke some of these laws already. Guaranteed, you've done it.
Right.
100%. So now nobody goes to heaven. That's one of those questions that pops up in my mind. Jesus is the answer to that question. The story of Jesus, the purpose of him, the metaphor, right? Mm-hmm. It's the answer, and it solves a lot of those questions for me, like the whole concept of Jesus. So that's why I've like really given it a much more sincere chance, because it does make a lot of sense in my head, for real. And I know that you've explained even the concept of Jesus in ways that have opened my eyes too, like the whole dying to yourself, like that crucifying yourself in order for you to sort of rise again. And
he was tortured before that.
That's crazy.
You think about, he was tortured before that. Imagine the mental torment that you have to go through when you realize that you have done something wrong or been a bad person. If you can recognize that, you're like, oh, like you're inside, the turmoil that you have is like, oh my God, I'm a bad person.
I know.
This is torture.
Yeah.
This is torture. And then you go through that torture, and then on the other side, you sacrifice yourself. You say, this isn't me. This is not who I have to be. I will let this go.
I'm gonna sacrifice this version of me,
Right.
and I'm gonna rise again.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a powerful person. And you can only get that from the Bible if you look at it the way that you were saying, metaphorically.
Yes.
You can only get it
Right.
if you look at it metaphorically.
Right. I agree. That's what I think. Yep.
You know what I think is an absolutely indispensable piece of practicing any faith, but specifically Christianity, because that's the one I'm interested in, is repentance. I think without repentance, I don't think you can. I don't think that you can even reach salvation. I don't think that you can even call yourself a Christian. I think you're disqualified if you don't repent. I really do. I think that there's this that's the indispensable practice. Like it's I would argue it's even more important than prayer. Like I really would. Like I think it's like you have to acknowledge, like it's just what you were just saying. You do something wrong and you're like, oh man, that's not me. Like that's the repenting, that torment that you get, and then but not like just feeling it, not just like it lingering in your gut or in your heart or in your chest, but you mindfully acknowledging it. And then me, I take it a step further. I do things. Like I set parameters like you do. That's where we're at in the beginning. I set parameters like you do, where I have physical things that I physically suffer. If you ever see me, dude, one time, if you ever see me just out running 100 miles, like, bro, I hate that. I hate every minute of it. But a lot of times that pain, like I'm subjecting myself to an immeasurable amount of pain and solitude. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't nothing. I go out there and I fucking take one step at a time for hours and hours and hours until my knees are swollen and my ankles are for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it to the point where Grace has to help me get undressed and put me in a shower and bathe me like a child because I take it seriously. I really do. Like I don't always run for that reason, but that's how I got into running. I would say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to be this person anymore. And if I do, here's the price that I'm willing to pay. And I would hold myself accountable to doing it. And I've done it for silly things like swearing, but I've done it for other things too. And when I'm in a low spot where I know I'm not showing up the way that God has called me to show up, I'm letting them down 50 miles, 100 miles, for real. Run until you can't fucking run anymore. And take that time to think about why you're not showing up and blah, blah. That's how I hold myself accountable. That's my repentance. And now everybody sees me and they're running all the time. And yeah, I do enjoy it a little bit more now. But that's not why I got into running, because that was my mode of repenting. And I think that without any like hard accountability, like something that you can observe, like something you feel, something you notice, not like being like, oh, I'm sorry I did that. Well, for me, that never actually provoked change.
Right.
I needed to do something. What do you think about this repentance?
I'm super interested in. Like this is a new thought to me as far as this being one of the most.
I think it's the most important.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because what else provokes the change? Like you being like this. Think about this. You wake up hungover. What's the first thought? Oh man, I'm never drinking again. I'm not drinking again. But you had the thought, but without any leverage, without any
consequences.
Yes, without any consequence, without any leverage. We're humans. We're just like Pavlov's dog. We can be conditioned. Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Those are the two levers. And we can pull on those levers as much as those are the levers that manipulate behavior change. This is well documented. You know what I mean? And so when you wake up and you say, never drinking again. Motherfucker, you going out tonight.
Yeah.
You're going out tonight.
As soon as the hangovers, which is crazy. You think that until the hangover is over, and then now that consequence isn't there anymore.
It's over.
Now it's in the past.
It's over. That consequence wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because now the positive reinforces it's
you have to create a mental consequence that sticks and lasts forever.
It has to stick, bro.
Yeah.
Has to. And I think that we're talking about, and this sounds very dramatic, and I don't think about it generally in these terms, but we're talking about your soul being saved.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's when we're talking about religion. If I say this is the most important piece, repentance, it's the most important piece, we're
Mhm.
talking about you either going to heaven or going to hell, which for most people is the most important piece of this practice. It's the end. It's the goal. It's why we do this, right? We want to be saved. So if we're talking about you being saved, salvation, repentance is the most important piece, because without it, you're going to live in the same sin that's costing you your salvation. There's going to be no correction. You're going to be, dude, I swear, I think it's the most important. It's crazy.
Have you watched or listened to any of Jordan Peterson's Bible series?
I love that guy, but no, I haven't. I need to. I think I listened. I think I listened to the first Exodus. I think I listened to the first.
Start in Genesis, bro.
Or maybe it was Genesis. I can't remember, but I need to listen to it. You know, he's gonna be here in St. Louis.
You want to go see him
on Wednesday? I would love to, but it's Valentine's Day.
I'm good.
You know what? Grace would probably let me, but I just
don't do it. And then Lau's waving her finger over there. No.
How much are the tickets?
They're expensive.
Dude, I would
drop
love to, bro. He's like I swear I was talking about him today. He's going to be one of those people that 100 years from now,
I heard you saying that.
People read what he writes.
That's interesting.
But why'd you ask me that? We're talking about repentance.
Because the other thing that he pointed out that I realized the most in his Bible series was the importance of sacrifice within, like the from the onset of the Bible, it immediately dives into the importance of sacrifice, of the story of Isaac and Abraham sacrificing Isaac. Are you familiar with that story? Ooh, man.
So what is it?
We're gonna have to go over. Do you want me to just tell you?
Yeah.
So Abraham was kind of a prophet. He was called by God, and he was a prophet. He was called by God. And anyway, there's a long story of how he tries to have a kid and can't have a kid, and eventually, after he's 100 years old, he finally is able to have a kid with his wife, Sarah, which her name was Sarai at the time.
Yeah.
Sarah Sarai. He's eventually able to have a kid, and so they have Isaac. This is his only true born son.
Yeah.
And this is why the Bible is so fucking crazy. It's his only true born son, and God calls him basically to sacrifice his son, to bring him up on this mountain and kill your son.
Yeah.
And Abraham does it without hesitation.
Yeah.
And he goes up and he does this. And his son is saying the whole time, Father, where's the goat that we're going to sacrifice? Where's the lamb? And Abraham says, God will provide the sacrifice. And so he takes him up to this hill and he's got the knife. Yeah. He's got the knife and he's about to sacrifice his only son that he never thought he would have a son. And now after 100 years, he has a son. He's about to do it without question. And an angel comes down to him and says, you have proven your loyalty. You've proven your faith. You don't have to sacrifice your son. Here's a lamb that we will use to sacrifice. And that is one of those hard-hitting stories where you're like, what? It just draws the question, what does sacrifice mean? What is the importance of sacrifice in our lives? It's like, it's one of the first stories in the Bible.
Man, that's so incredibly powerful. It really is. And this is what Chad Wright was saying. Those who cling to life shall lose it, and those who give will keep it, right? That's really, really interesting. Of course, it resonates with me on a deep level. It really does. You got to be willing to give it all. You really do.
Which is crazy, right?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
So what I've kind of come to in that story is because when I initially read the story, I replaced, anytime the Bible said the Lord or said God, I replaced it with the truth. I replaced it with highest moral compass. So like those words were synonymous for me. God, high moral compass, the truth, the best direction you can head in.
Yeah.
And so now, and looking at it under that frame, I think, okay, God, the truth is calling you to even make sacrifices of your children, if you so have to, for truth. So this is an example that's maybe it correlates well, maybe it doesn't. But for instance, like your job is you're at a corporate job and you're putting food on the table for your family, and the job says you need to get vaccinated or else you're fired. And like the truth is, this is wrong. This is wrong to make people get vaccinated for their jobs. It's just wrong. That's the truth. I could bend to what this company is saying and keep food on the table for my children, or I could go towards the truth and risk the safety of my
100%.
family.
And you're like Abraham saying,
Right.
God will provide.
Right.
God will
The
provide.
truth.
Yeah, I'm just gonna walk in blind faith right now and know that, like, if I just, dude, that is that resonates with me on a deep level. That's 1,000% how I think faith ought to be observed. Like, for real. Like, there's times where I'm walking, bro, and I'm like through life, and I'm like, I don't know how the fuck this is about to work out, for real. For real. But it does. It really does, man. I can tell you, I've told a specific story that was perhaps the most eye-opening moment for me of this truth, which was like, I was just standing on principles. Like, I was standing on principles in prison. And like, yeah, there was a moment where like I really thought I was walking into a situation where I was gonna like have to like fight for my life, like for real. And I walked in there, and the most powerful guy in the prison, you know, and I walked in. Like, typically, this would have been a situation, the old Mark, I would have walked in with a weapon, with something like prepared for this fight. Like, this is clearly what it was about to be. Like, the most powerful guy in the prison is a guy who runs the gangs, and they call him a big homie. In New York State, the Bloods they're the most powerful gang in the state, and so every different prison has a big homie. And then there's one big homie that overlooks sort of the whole thing. And anyway, and so I beat up a big homie. Bad. It's the worst thing you can do.
Damn.
So because it was just on principle. I was like, you know. Anyway, we go to solitary confinement. We get sent to new prisons. Now I'm in this new prison. It's only a matter of time before the big homie here finds out that the reason I got moved was because I beat up the big homie there. And there's rules that they follow. There's laws that. They, you know, to their credit, I hate gangs. I hate that group mentality. Fucking, if you're a man, stand by yourself. But anyway, so he found out. Long story short, he found out. And the day he found out, I actually was in the same housing unit, living with the big homie of this new jail.
No way.
So like, he had immediate access to me all the time. And one day he was just like, "Yo, you know, I need, you know, come to the laundry room." The laundry room is where you go. Like, this is the only place in a housing unit that has no cameras.
So you can fight.
Yeah, you fight. Whatever you got to do. And so he asked me to go in the laundry room, and I'm like, that's it. Like, that's whenever you hear that, you'll go to the laundry room. It's like, okay, this is like, yo, let's fight. And him being the guy he is, I mean, he's in there for manslaughter or some, you know, like, I'm like, okay, I should either bring a weapon or something. I'd go in there weaponless. Don't even put my sneakers on. Where are my slippers?
Why? Why did you
just
do
my
that?
defenses down, all of them down, and I'm just like, man, I've been, you know, I just been following God at this point, for real, and I knew it. Like, this was I'm okay. Like, I'm gonna be fine. Like, this, I'm gonna stand on this principle. I'm not gonna back down. I'm not gonna apologize. And I go in there. And I knew that the situation that happened with the other big homie, I was standing up for truth. I was standing up for the right thing, right?
You're following God.
I was standing up on principle, right? It wasn't just like my ego that made me do this, right? And so anyway, because that's debatable too. Some people think that, like, if you're violent, like, I think God has, you know, warriors, so to speak. Like, there's going to be violence in the world. There's going to be violence. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be clashes. And that's not for everybody. But some of God's servants are gonna have a capacity for violence, and
Mhm.
that's me. I'm one of them. I'm okay with that, and I don't think that makes me less of a Christian. But anyway, so I go in there, and I'm like, he shuts the door, and my heart's just pounding, okay, and he was like, listen, I lived with you for a couple months now. Well, he was like, Santana's here. Santana's the guy I beat up. Because I heard about what happened. And he's like, I heard, and I'm just, my heart stopped pumping. And then he's like, I lived with you for a couple months now. I watched you. You don't bother nobody. You keep to yourself. He's like, I know if you did that, he deserved it.
Mm.
And he was like, I just want you to know that as long as you're here in this prison, nobody's going to bother you. And
Oh, shit. Wow.
Bro. And he had that power. He had that power to be like, he's good.
Whew.
Bro.
Holy shit.
Swear.
Holy shit.
Swear. But that's what I think about when you tell me that story about Abraham and Isaac. It's like, I'm walking in there. I don't bring no weapon. I don't, nothing. Like, you know what, God? If this is what it is, if this is it, like, I'm going to stand on it. I'm going to stand on the principles. And, man, he showed up for me in that moment. I swear.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was even deeper than that. Like, I had worked for the previous year to like really earn my good time back. Like I was like there was a lot on the line. Like if I went back to the box, it was over. I was losing good time. I was gonna do every day of my time, of my sentence. It was gonna cost me several more months in prison. So I was just going into it like not only thinking for my life, not only thinking for my physical safety, but thinking about the time that now I'm about to spend another 6 months in prison that I don't have to spend here, like just for this. But I was ready to stand on it all. And whew, isn't that crazy?
Wild.
Yeah.
Truly wild. Wow. There's
Well,
a lot to unpack there, man.
There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Dude. Like I think of that as I went into that genuinely thinking like I am about to risk my life to stand on a principle, right? This is why, like, when people attack me online,
I want to cut you off just because Lamb of God. You were a Lamb of God. You were a sacrifice for the truth.
Yeah. And you know what though? Even to what you're saying though, from that moment on, I mean, even up until that moment, but specifically from that moment on, all the biggest gangsters, like all the leaders of the prison culture, they respected me so much. Like I have this thing, it's weird. And if you're my boy, and I've never explained this to you, and don't read too deeply into this, but there was a period in my life where I was just trying to separate myself in every imaginable way from them. Like I always had this thing. I used to have this mantra: this is what makes the difference between you and them. And there was no specific them. It was just them. It was just everybody that wasn't the way that was the way that I didn't want to be. And so I used to, in prison, everybody shakes hands. They do the little dap, like that whole bro thing. I don't do that. I don't like. We're like 7 years, 8 years removed from like where I really started to change and be mindful about some of this stuff. But I definitely took it to an extreme. I think we've talked before. Like I didn't watch TV. I didn't listen to music. I didn't read any magazines. I took things to an extreme when I was going through this period. But I wouldn't do that dap thing. I would either shake your hand or I wouldn't. And I would do like the old fashioned handshake, right? And so in prison, everybody goes for the dap.
Yeah.
And so, if one person goes for the dap and you go for a handshake, it's always kind of weird and awkward, but I didn't give a fuck. I didn't care.
Wow.
I would just do that. And at this point, from after that, the important guys, quote unquote, in prison, they would come up and they would shake my fucking hand.
No way.
Swear to God.
Wow.
Swear to God.
Whoa.
I swear it was crazy. Like,
whoa.
And yeah, it was powerful. But anyway, now I that wasn't the only time that I was in a position where I'm like, I'm gonna stand on this and I don't care what it costs me in this moment, right? And I've done that a couple times, not a lot, but a couple times.
Was that the first time you ever did that?
No, that was the one where I thought there was the highest likelihood that I was
Gotcha.
about to get stabbed,
Gotcha.
like for real. So, and I went into it like defenseless, like I said. But now I go online, and these people are trying to intimidate me. They're trying to like peer pressure me into backing down from my position, or into foregoing what I think is right, or my commitment to the truth. And it's like, are you kidding me right now? I will lose all this shit. I will lose all this shit before you make me abandon the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've literally risked my life to stay committed to the principles that I believe in. And you think that you're going to peer pressure me on the internet? You're going to call me some names? So it's funny. It's funny. And I genuinely look back at my path, and I can like draw correlations between some of the low moments and how that's correlated and given me tools that have helped me get to this moment. You know what I mean? Like I think that learning that lesson through some of those experiences, that like, listen, you need to stay committed to the truth. You need to stay committed to the principles that you believe in, and your values, and your ethical code. You need to stay committed to that no matter what. And if you do, you'll be fine. Everything always works out. I learned that through those experiences, and now as a business person, I'm going through the same shit, and it's equipped me for those.
That's so cool.
Isn't it crazy?
That's so cool.
It really is. Can you think of a moment that you've been in the same position?
Where I had to defend.
Yeah, like have you ever been Abraham? Have you ever been Abraham?
Ooh, damn, Mark.
It's crazy. I mean, you're young, maybe not.
While I'm thinking of an example to come to mind, I think in the micro, like in many different micro ways I have. And when I say that, I mean, like the first and absolute greatest lesson that my dad ever taught me, I think it's the best lesson to learn, is to not make excuses. And I learned that at a really young age. Like it was third grade. I was maybe 9 years old or whatever. And I was playing soccer, and I had a bad game. And he's like, "Why'd you have a bad game?" And I said, "Well, the parents were yelling from the sideline." And he fucking snapped at me. Like,
no way.
Snapped. Like, and I was like, "Holy shit! Why is he getting so angry?" But anyway, that led me to stop making, like, from an early age, no more excuses. And all of these little times that I don't make excuses, like that is a sacrifice.
It is,
in a sense, every single little time.
Yeah.
And I think that has accumulated to now I can stand on the truth now.
Yeah. What do you think? Can you like what do you think? Because this is difficult, right? And I'm trying to think of how to articulate this question, but do you think our society would look any different if people were committed to the truth in that way, like Abraham, and if so, in what ways? Like, can you highlight any things that you see happening on a cultural level that you think maybe are ramifications of us sacrificing the commitment to the truth instead of making a sacrifice to preserve the truth?
And this is where I see like the idea of false idols too, by the way.
Like what?
Like an excuse is a false idol.
Oh, got it.
Because you are saying, when you make that, I know I keep freaking going to that, but anyway, when you make an excuse, that is a false idol, because you are saying, this is out of my hands, this is in God's hands.
Oh yeah.
This excuse is now a God, because you are giving up all of your power to it. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that right off the bat? Because you asked. I'll think about it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, truth, clarity, right? So,
because if we worked for truth, we would all be good. There really would no be evil, right?
Yeah, or even just standing on principle.
Sure. Okay.
Like you brought up the COVID vaccine thing. Mm-hmm. Whether you are pro-vaccine or whether you don't think the vaccine is right for you, like I'm not anti-vaccine, but I didn't think it was appropriate for me, and so I didn't get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. I think that it is wrong that that companies try to force people to do things, right? And so instead of just preserving their personal autonomy with respect to their own bodies and their health, right? And so I think that across the board, you know what? Not even vaccines. I think masks is a better example, because when they started making kids wear masks in schools, right? There's you have to think about the pros and cons, or even when they start talking about vaccinating children. I think there was a lot of social pressure and a lot of corporate pressure for parents to vaccinate their children or make their kids wear masks. And just as an example, I think we could talk about how damaging it is to kids' social development for them to be in a classroom where everybody's wearing a mask all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's just an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know there's so many parents that disagreed with that. They didn't want their kid wearing the mask, but they wouldn't stand on the principle.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was like me walking into that laundry room knowing full well my position and not and saying, whatever it costs me right now, I'm going to stand on this position. These parents, they know their position, and they're like, but they're willing to compromise on it. So I think that's really what I'm getting at on a cultural level. There's like, our culture just seems there's so much toxicity. There's so much social tension that exists in our culture right now. There's a lot of political tension. There's just a lot and I think that at the root of some of it, not all of it, but at the root of some of it is a widespread unwillingness to stand on principles that seem like common sense. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just I don't know. That was sort of, if any of those come to mind for you, because I think that's a pretty decent example. Is that?
I don't know how controversial we'll get here, but I think the Black Lives Matter movement would look a lot different too.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
First of all, Black Lives Matter is an organization that is directed by white people. But not only that, it sprang up out of the George Floyd incident. Is that correct?
Michael Brown, and here in Ferguson.
Got it. See, so it re-sprang up around George Floyd.
Right. Yeah.
Got it. So Black Lives Matter actually started earlier. Yeah, man. Okay, how so?
Because if we decided, okay, like, this is the principle and this is the truth, to me, what I see in that movement is what truth is keeps changing every single time. And so, I don't know. An example of that is, so you see these Black Lives Matters protests for George Floyd and Michael Brown and so on and so forth. And I can't remember his name, but the police officer. So and that was initially police brutality, right? And so then it was relatively recently the 4 black cops that killed the black guy. When I saw that the protests stopped early, that I didn't see any Black Lives Matter signs at the protests. And so now, as you're saying, okay, well, now that it's black people that killed this man, now we need to change the mark of what this is about.
Yeah, what this is about.
Because before we could say, okay, it's white versus black.
Yeah.
But now we can't say that. So now we have to say something else, and we have to keep moving that mark. And by not seeing those like Black Lives Matter signs at the protest, this is what indicated that to me. So it keeps changing. And so by not standing on that principle of like, we have an agreed upon rule of like, this is wrong. But if you keep changing it.
My issue with the Black Lives Matter movement is that it is an assault on a general assault on police officers, right? Like, on their integrity. It generalizes and said that police officers are killing black people, which I believe that statistically more white people are victims of like misfires and things like that, police officer per year.
And then the next layer, and then just to give context of what we're talking about, the next argument that is made on the other side is, well, what about per capita? How many?
Yeah. So per capita, I get it. But it's basically saying that all police officers are racist. And that's just not. That's not been my experience. I've had a lot of experience with a lot of police officers, and it's just not been my experience. Of course, there are racist police officers, and then there are preconceived ideas, and then there's profiling, and I think that some profiling is actually justified.
Necessary.
Yeah, it's actually justified. That's part of their job. They're supposed to
My dad was a cop in North City. He would profile white people because they were coming in to sell heroin.
Yeah. So, I mean, this profiling is a part of the job. You have to create these profiles and then look for people who fit the profiles. Like, that's a part of being a police officer. But anyway, I don't like that. I don't like the generalization. And then also with the George Floyd situation specifically, I just think that I think that an organization like Black Lives Matter actually causes more harm than good. One, this is because it, in an effort to, I don't know, what the fuck are they even trying to do? Just raise awareness? Like what? I don't
know what they are.
I mean,
what is the
end goal?
That's my point is we don't know.
Yeah, we don't
know.
What's the end goal, right? But in an effort to raise awareness around something and maybe potentially provoke some change within law enforcement in America, maybe potentially that would be the goal, right? Some better training or whatever. Defunding is what it led to, which I think is counterproductive. So, way to go, guys. But in an effort to do that, they only drove the stake of division in between black and white people in America even deeper, right? So that's more harm than good. That's counterproductive it's a net negative for society that we're all so divided. That we have this imaginary, this racism that exists because it's really not. It's the exception. It's not the rule. Most cops are not racist. Most white people are not racist. And so it sort of propagated this idea, a very general idea that white cops hate black guys. Like that's just not true. Yeah. But then also it completely ignores the actual problem. The greatest threat to black lives in America is black men. That's a reality. The greatest threat to black lives in America is black men. Black on, why are we not talking about, we're not talking about black on black. If black lives really mattered, then we would be talking about how black men are killing each other in their own neighborhoods every fucking day. And that the vast minority of black men that die every year are at the hands of the police. Drastic minority. And then not only that, but it was just clever marketing, and it really bothered me. It was arguably the best marketing I've ever seen in my life, because now you have an organization that's called Black Lives Matter. And if you say, I don't support Black Lives Matter, people will hear you don't think that Black Lives Matter.
So tricky.
That's not true. I'm not There's the difference between disagreeing with the organization Black Lives Matter and disagreeing with the statement that Black Lives Matter.
And most rational people believe Black Lives Matter.
But dude, people are so easily manipulated.
I know.
Yeah.
That's because and what my frustration with that was
wait. To tie all this together, because the question is like, okay, you brought up a perfect example, but I don't think we tied it together. Of where in society do we see that if people would just stand on principle, stand up for what is right, in the face of, sort of whatever consequences come. The Black Lives Matter movement is a perfect example that you brought up, because there were so many people who hopped on that bandwagon of the Black Lives Matter they were afraid to point out what I'm saying right now, which is that there's a difference between the statement Black Lives Matter and the organization Black Lives Matter. And the organization Black Lives Matter clearly had some ulterior motives. They championed this idea that they were going to reinvest into black communities and all this stuff. That money never made it to black, predominantly black communities. It never made it. Not only that, but it was only entrenching black communities in even greater. It was deepening the division between black and white communities, which really doesn't help anybody. So like nobody was willing to say that. Nobody was willing to stand up. I was. And I got attacked for it. I got hate online for it. But you know what? I stayed true to my integrity. I stayed true to my values. And so that to answer the question of, where in society is there a widespread example of where people could have just stood up and said, you know what, that's not, like George Floyd is another example. His autopsy came back and everybody said, oh, this police officer killed George Floyd. Was there police brutality that day? Yes. Was his actions inappropriate? Maybe. It's hard to say. When your life's in danger and you're in a life or death fight with another grown man, you got to do what you got to do. I'm sorry, I can't necessarily say I would or wouldn't have done what that police officer did
in the George Floyd situation.
Yes.
Well,
no, but listen.
I mean, he was handcuffed behind his back. Like that was.
But the autopsy came back and showed that George Floyd died from a fentanyl overdose. He did not die from suffocation. He did not die from, foot. So, and you know what? I'm sorry, but I have a different perspective because I've been to prison. You know what happens in prison when you don't, if a CO says to you, turn around, put your hands on the wall. That's what they say. They don't say put your hands behind your back. They say put your hands on the wall. So you know what the fuck you do? You turn around and you put your hands on the wall. You know what happens if you do anything outside of that? They beat the fuck out of you. Right then and there. They will beat the shit out of you. And they'll come in here. We used to call them the Ninja Turtles. Because they'll come in with fucking shields. Swear to God, 20 of those motherfuckers will come in with shields and they will beat the shit out of you in front of everybody. And in prison, you don't have any rights. You're property. You're property of the state. There's nobody, if there was one person in there with a camera phone, man, we would have, there would be another movement, right? Prisoners' lives matter, right? But there's not. There's nobody there to save you. There's no peer pressure. There's no social pressure. And so as somebody that's been in that situation, when I see somebody resisting arrest, we police officers have one of the most dangerous, hardest jobs in our country. They're here to serve and protect. We've entrusted them to do this. And now we have, like, you can't ask them to do what we're asking them to do and then, like, ask them to make them walk on pins and needles too.
Walk on eggshells.
They got to be able to do their job. And when somebody's resisting arrest, I know even if he's handcuffed, it doesn't matter. You don't know what that guy had if he had a weapon in his pants that he was trying to get to, or you don't know. You have to subdue them. And when somebody, like, so that's why I have a little bit of sympathy for the officer. Now, I don't think that he was right. I don't. But, like, when somebody's squirming around, you just don't know what they've got. You just don't know. And I've been in situations. I have a big ass scar on my whatever this is, under my armpit. Big ass scar. I'm talking like 5-6 inches from when somebody tried to kill me. You know what I mean? And it was with a shard of glass.
Was this in the first prison after?
This is
fighting the big homie.
This was before I went to prison. It was with a shard of glass. Like, this person didn't have a knife. They didn't have so, like, you just don't know what somebody's going to grab. You don't know. You don't know. So when you're a police officer, you know what you're doing. Hey, sit still. Just stand here. Put your hands behind your back, because I don't know what you're trying to do. So I don't know. Just, I've been in the situations that I've been in. I have a little bit of empathy for the police officers, because you're resisting right now, and I don't know why. What is your end goal? You're in handcuffs. What are you moving so much for? Just sit still. But no, anyway, I digress. But I'm just saying, like, it's intentionally manipulative and misleading. That whole movement was, and people started to see that. Like, whether it was Michael Brown, whether it was, what's the other kid? Trayvon Martin,
Alton Sterling.
It's just very, very divisive, very manipulative, very opportunistic. Getting money from all these people and pressuring, all these companies to post a black square and all this. Like, what is this actually about? And as people started to realize that, there was some question marks, nobody was willing to stand up and be like, listen, man, I think that Black lives for sure matter, but I'm not about to hop on and pile on to all these police officers and pretend like every police officer in America is racist right now. Nobody said that. Nobody was willing to say that. You know what? My mentor was willing to say it. He fucking said it, and we got attacked. We had influencers that worked with our brand that left because we wouldn't post a black square. Think about that.
No way.
Swear to God.
Holy shit,
swear to God,
bro.
I'm talking like we're already $100 million company, and they was like, Andy, you got to post a black square. I'm not posting nothing,
dude. Some of the most disgusting behavior I ever saw was people that would post things like that, or post for Palestine or whatever, and then right after that, OnlyFans link.
Come on,
I mean, I would look at it and I'd
Come
go,
on, man.
like, this is crazy.
Come on, man. The world we live in right now is crazy, man.
Crazy.
And nobody's willing to stand on the principles, man. I think that's part of it, man.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
I think another one right now that frustrates me, and I don't know the full answers to it, is for instance someone that would, oh God, really fucking frustrated me. But like the whole Palestine-Israel thing.
It is.
Now people would, if you made a post supporting Palestine, because there was that support Palestine movement, and you didn't make a post supporting the 1,400 people that were civilians that were slaughtered, you are fucked up to not recognize that.
Yeah.
We can talk about all the history of that, and I'm not gonna, like, I don't know shit about it.
There's a lot of history.
But you just ignored 1,400 people being slaughtered.
Yeah.
And then you want to go and support Palestine.
I know.
Like whether you, yeah.
But okay, there's nuance here.
There's no nuance to a terrorist slaughter.
No, there's nuance here because the devil's advocate in me would say that there's a difference between supporting Palestine and supporting Hamas.
There is the principle
just
for me
because you're pro-Palestine doesn't mean you're not. It doesn't mean you're pro-Hamas.
The principle for me, and there were probably Palestinians. I'm talking about the people here in America that made those, that were saying, because I am about love and I am about human life.
Yeah,
I support Palestine. Like that's I want to make that clear.
Yeah,
that's what fucking pissed me off.
Yeah, it is. There's definitely been innocent casualties on both sides, and people will. I hate when people try to reduce things to degrees, like for them to be like, oh, well, there's tens of thousands of Palestinians that have been killed now, and there's only been a couple thousand. Israel. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Innocent life is innocent life, and I tend to agree with you on this. However, this brings me back to nationalist. I'm a nationalist. Listen, man, that don't got nothing to do with me. I don't got nothing to do. And then you know what? I would even say there's people here right now that have family in Israel, that have family in Palestine, and it's understandable that those people would hope for a resolution, maybe even feel called to go back and try to work towards a solution and contribute in some way there. I would still say if it's unreasonable for them to expect or request us to go and help. You came here for a reason. You came here because we're, to some degree on top of our shit over here. We have a better living environment here. We have a safer living environment here. You came here for a reason. And I feel like that's like me when my parents found me, my foster parents. I go and being like, well, you need to go take my mom in too, and my sisters, and you need to go fix that situation. In fact, not only take them in, don't take them in. In fact, you need to go pay the rent at my mom's house and pay for her to go to rehab and make sure that we have groceries over there in my mom's fridge, because you took me in. That's how I think about that, bro. It's legitimately. So like, I don't think I think that's got nothing to do with us. Like history, the history is filled with just these ebbs and flows, these battles, these tensions. Especially the history in the Middle East between the Jews and the Muslims. Like it's thousands of years old. Whatever we do over there is not gonna terminate that battle. It's not gonna bring that to an end. It's not gonna bring peace to the Middle East. It's not gonna make Muslims be okay with Jews being in that region. It's not gonna make Jews okay with Palestinians being in that region. There's nothing that we are going to do over there other than spend hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer money. Think about it. Me and Lau were just talking about this the other day. You work from January till fucking July for the government. And then from August to the end of the year, you get to keep that money. That's how much money we pay in taxes. You work every day that you work from January till fucking July. You're working for free. You're giving that money away. For them to go put it in Israel.
That's crazy.
Palestine, Ukraine.
Craziness.
That's the reality. That's what we're really talking about right now. Is that's the sacrifice. We're talking about sacrifice too. That's the sacrifice that we're making as Americans. And you have to ask yourself, are you okay with that? Yeah. Now, from a moral and ethical standpoint, does it sound nice to be able to take care of the rest of the world? Yeah, but when's the last time you heard of another country sending money over here to make our life better? Fucking never heard it.
We haven't had civilians slaughtered en masse.
What
in?
But what does that got to do with us? Everybody has a government.
I know. I don't understand the economics of it.
Think about.
But on a principled level, we'll bring it more locally here. If I have the power to stop a bully, and I know there are more to this, but on the principle of it, if I have the power to stop a bully from hurting someone, and you don't do that, that is
100%.
That is immoral to do that. I think that
when you are,
it is immoral.
I think being a citizen of a country or a community or a member of a community, right? It is there's some duty. It's a duty, right? Where be an American citizen, you have a duty to exercise your rights here, because your freedom only exists if you exercise it. Mm-hmm. That's something that, okay, think about that for a little bit. That'll blow your mind. Your freedom only exists when you exercise. This is one of the greatest realizations I took from prison.
That's cool.
Because I talked before about sitting in prison and looking at society from an objective point of view and realizing that most people in society were living in the same exact routine that I was living in prison. We're voluntarily imprisoning ourselves in society because nobody's exercising the freedom that they have here in America.
Most people don't recognize their chains because they never step outside of its limits.
Because they never step outside of its limits. That's a fact. Okay, but when you're a citizen, not only do you have an obligation, a duty to exercise your freedom, but you have a duty and obligation to the whole, right? All of us have a duty and obligation to make this the best place to live for all of us. That's part of us living here. That's
the world?
The
Earth?
No. In your community. I think that goes on a household. I think you can scale this up. Mm-hmm. Household, community, state, nation, right? But then there's world, right? That's the biggest one. But there's a hierarchy. You got to take it.
Yes.
What do they say? In order to change the world, you got to change yourself.
There's
right?
a hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy.
Sure.
So you start on the ground level and you go up. We are trying to do that for the world before we do it for ourselves. That's my only problem with it. And that's why I'm saying I'm a nationalist. I'm a nationalist. You're right. If there's a bully over here doing something, I live here. No. You ain't gonna do that, because before long, if I tolerate that, that becomes the norm.
Yeah.
That's not. I live here. Like, people get mad when I made that post online about the fat people getting the parking in the handicap spots and they don't have a handicap pass. You know why that's a problem for me? Because if we tolerate that, that becomes the norm. Now my fucking grandmother doesn't have. She's parking in the back of the parking lot. When that's why it's a problem. It's a principle problem.
Yep.
So. I think when I say I'm a nationalist, dude, we have so much problems here. And when I think about the fact that I work from January till fucking July to send my money over there, think about this.
Totally.
Think about this migrant issue in New York City. They just took a whole school district and said, you guys are going back to remote learning.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay?
In order to house
illegal
immigrants,
How many fucking homeless people, how many homeless American citizens are in New York City we have never done anything like that,
right,
to have an emergency housing situation for the homeless American citizens, but now we're doing it for people that don't even live here?
Yep.
That is crazy.
Totally.
To me. You know what I mean? So
completely agree.
That's my sentiments when I say I'm a national. We got to take care of ourselves, and we got to go up that hierarchy of needs. You take care of your house. You take care of your house, then you take care of your neighborhood, then you take care of your city or your town where you live in, then you take care of your state, then you take care of your nation. Then we can worry about all that stuff. That's how I think it should go. Like, even when I'm gung ho about supporting small business, local businesses. People, I don't know how people don't get this. Like you get money. Like, okay, so there's these companies, and they sort of, everybody's employed here, and that's how they get money, right? So there's money being distributed on the ground level, and in a perfect situation, that money would be recirculated right back into the same place where the money was distributed. And this sort of, the money just cycles here. It stays in the community. But instead, what we do is we get this little bit of money here, and it's distributed, and then it goes up and out. And like our community is just being drained of all of our resources, all of our power, right? And when you support the people that are in your community, not only do you make them, money and power are, it's a very good analogy. If you think about your money as your power, and you vote with your dollars, and that's who you're giving your power to. And when you support Amazon, you're making them more powerful. You're giving them more influence. You're allowing them to make more decisions that affect your life on a day-to-day. But when you support a local business, your local grocery store owner, if that guy accumulates enough of the local people's money, i.e. power, maybe someday he will be the guy that we have speak for us, and his interests are aligned with yours. His kids might go to the same school that your kids go to. He drives on the same road to work that you drive on. He pays taxes in the same neighborhood that you pay taxes in. So your interests are aligned, but Amazon's interests are not aligned with your interests. And so we keep giving our money to people who are serving their own interests with that power that we keep giving them, and it's weakening our power. Whereas when you give your power or your money to somebody whose interests are aligned with yours, they're going to use that power to further their interests, which are aligned with your interests, which makes your life better. How do people not understand that?
So help me understand the actual economics of it. It's cycling in. How does money then become brought into that to make it grow more? Or does it need to grow in that cycle?
What do you mean? I think it grows in that cycle.
So how does because what money is coming into that cycle?
Well, there's already money in. I think that
you get what I'm.
I do get what you're saying. Like, where does the money originate? But I think that the local companies are the machines that that are the starting point, at least for our purposes, right? Because that's a great question. Like, okay, where does any of the money come from? But I think that the local business, like for example, First Forum, like they're generating all this money, this revenue, and they're employing their employees. So they're distributing part of that money there. They're reinvesting back into this is just a business cycle. And the more that people do business with that company, because it's a St. Louis-based company, they pay taxes in St. Louis. They employ people in St. Louis. They, the owners of those companies live here in St. Louis. They donate to their local schools, private schools, and stuff like that. So where does the money, the original money?
Right, because in order for First Forum to get to that size, with how large it is, money has to come from elsewhere, which means that person has to be funneling money outside of their
probably, that's a really good question, but it's probably, I mean, it still has to be capitalism. It still has to be the entrepreneur. It has to be people pulling money into the community from other places. It has to be. Like where else would it come from?
That's tricky. Yeah,
it has to be. It has to be. Like Purina, Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah,
it's these companies like Enterprise Rental Car. It's these companies pulling money in from other places. It has to be.
But then our money also has to be going outside of this.
It could, but I'm saying
it has to in order for these gears to work. It has to.
No, I think maybe
because
maybe, but okay, we're in a situation where I think essentially what I'm saying and to the point of being gung ho about supporting small and local businesses is perhaps it is not realistic to think that all of your money can stay in your local economy. It's not realistic. However, I think the situation we're in right now as a country is almost all of our money is being funneled out of these local communities. Yeah. And almost all of our money is being funneled to the same 10 megacorps, right? Wrong. And so what we can do is become a more mindful consumer and at least spend as much money as possible in our local. So we have right now it's all of it's coming to the local consumer, through them working and earning a small living, and then it goes up and out,
Mhm.
all of it. But if we could create two little like cycles, one is this little cycle that is us spending money in our local economy, and then some of it goes up and out.
Mhm,
That's more
mhm, mhm.
realistic. It's never going to be
Okay.
all of it staying in. But I agree with you
Yeah.
on that point. But I do think that we could probably realistically get to a point where, I don't know, 75% of our money stays in our local economy. I think that's realistic. I really do.
And what that does now I'm kind of putting the pieces together too. But what that does is, I think what you were saying is, now it gives the control to the more locally.
Yes.
Now you have more control.
Now you're empowering, because money and power, if you think about them as interchangeable, and you know, and you thinking you're voting with your dollars, right? So you spend your money with people who stand for things that you believe in, or who, generally speaking, their interests are aligned with yours. They don't even have to stand for values or morals that you believe in, but their interests are aligned with yours. And then you empower those people to further their interests, which are your interests, okay, with money. That's what you do. Like that's I think, dude, I think that's, if I were to say, because I journaled about this the other day, if I had the power to make one change that I would want to see the ripple effect of in America, one, you only get one, and I want to hear yours now. This is the type of shit I journal about.
I like that question.
If I had the power to make one change that I would get to see the ripple effect of in America, it would be making people more mindful consumers. It would make them more mindful consumers. I think that's the one change that I would make, and the ripple effect with that would be insane. Because right now we're in a situation where, like for example, politicians, our government was built, in political office was a thing. It was like a service. Like you had a career, and like for temporarily you would volunteer to go speak for your constituents, your peers, your community, and you were maybe like a grocery store owner or an accountant or a lawyer or something, but people respected you, and you would go out and they knew who you were, they knew what you stood for. You were from this community, and so you understood people's interests in this community, and you would go and represent your community. Nowadays, being a politician is a career. That's not how it was ever supposed to be. You know what I mean? And so I think that if people became more mindful consumers, they would redistribute power and influence. And over time, the ripple effect would be insane. It would be insane because it would re-empower local governments. It would re-empower governments at the state level. It wouldn't be what we have now, which is this like circus puppet show of federal politics really dictating down. Power would be with the people if we became more mindful consumers. So yeah, anyway, what about
That's
you?
cool.
If you had the power to implement one change in society that you would get to see the ripple effects of long term, what would it be?
So are we talking like on a practical term, or could it be a mindset change?
Could be a mindset change. That's fine.
Okay.
Whatever comes to mind.
All right. This is the first thing that comes to mind then. Actually, you know how they have, you see quotes on fucking Instagram all the time. I really, some of these quotes have actually changed my life.
Yeah, so don't make fun of them.
So, so one of them was, I think it's from Aristotle maybe, but it is the mark of intelligence to entertain a thought without completely accepting it. And so if I could make any ripple effect in the world, it would be to be able to entertain a thought without having to accept it or attack it.
You know what? That characterizes you.
How so?
Like you do that probably. I mean, it just, at least as far as I can observe, you do that maybe as well as anybody I've ever met. Because like I'll say some stuff and you'll just be like, you do, yeah, you do. You're just like, but you genuinely consider what the fuck I just said. You don't like jump to I don't do that as well. I'm like, no, that's wrong. You say anything, I'm like, nah.
I disagree.
Before I even explain myself, nah, I disagree. Let me think about why. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. I disagree. Let me think about why. That's a good, yeah.
Yeah. Ah, that's good, man. That's good. This is the type of stuff I think about all the time, though. I have this thing that I think about often. Of if anybody can change the world, we can. Like I always say that. If anybody can change the world, man, we can. Because why not? Why not have aspirations like that? I don't know. Like for real. Like why not? I don't know why anybody wouldn't. Why not think as big as you possibly can, and then
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Why not try to be the greatest human that's ever existed?
Yeah. Like for real. Like it's a competition.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to earn God's favor out here. All right, cool. You got any last thoughts, questions? This is a good one. I like this. This is a good conversation.
I was just starting to get high, man. Any last thoughts? Shout out to Omen, because this is the only public place that I can go to where I feel comfortable leaving my things, like, and going to the bathroom and stuff. Literally the only public place. So that's
fire.
But I really appreciate you, man. Like, the reason that I first came into this coffee shop was because one of your Instagram posts talking about building a village.
Really?
And yeah, now how passionate I am about, like, even family moving away.
Yeah.
But like, I just really resonated with that, and I've just it's been cool to watch you and learn from you, because I've learned a lot.
Man, I've learned a lot from you too. Honestly, you're a wise young fella. That's why I had you on the show, for real. Like I love our conversations, because you always challenge me. Even your little bullshit. That shit pisses me off. I'm like, what? Then it makes me double guess. I gotta double check my work. Like, does this hold water? Because he's gonna find out if it doesn't, because he's really thinking about it right now. But nah, dude, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I know that we talk about you a lot, so hopefully people enjoyed this. Getting to hear from Jack, who's behind the camera usually, and honestly, I wouldn't have done the podcast if it wasn't for you, because I wasn't in a place to start it, and sort of me and you were fucking around, and it instigated a little pressure for me, like, okay, cool, get it going. So thank you for that, man. Thank you for being on, and thank you for being around. I'm so glad. And for the first several months, just to put this on the record, Jack didn't come to the men's group, and I used to notice, and I'd be like, man, this guy thinks he's too cool for the men's group. But now you come, bro. Now you come, and you bring people. Benjamin, you brought people. So it's cool to see you becoming more and more of a part of the community. So yeah, dude,
cool.
Appreciate
I'm on
you,
board,
brother.
man.
Yeah.